We are in game number 1 between Yui and Louie and Knusch and ZertoN, and let's check and see how some of these spawns have got for us.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick look here. It looks like ZertoN is going to go for that military school, just like we talked about a little bit before. Probably going to be trying to get a little bit of that early aggression, you know, towards maybe that French player, and we'll take a look at Nushbear's side. Dabs, that's pretty forward gold up there.
If there's one thing I know about playing with a French teammate or against a French player, forward gold is the least likely thing you are happy to see on the map. If you're one of Louie or Yui on the other side, pretty happy to go ahead and pressure that gold. And speaking of pressure, it's funny how we called this exact thing from before the game even happened. It's Vanguard Men-at-Arms, it's the military school. It's all about trying to delay those French knights and pressure the French player, and that is going to be the game plan for both sides.
Yep, military school and barracks. You swear it's pre-recorded how good we are at trying to pick this out. But that Vanguard Men-at-Arms will be storming across the other side of the map in that nice fancy leather helmet that he's got going on. And he's going to see where that forward gold is. Dabs, he's going to be licking his chops.
Yeah, this is one of those two that a lot of times with the scouting, you really don't know where to go. And you can see that's partially why Louie is splitting the Men-at-Arms. But right as this Men-at-Arms arrives at that front side gold, sees the teal color, knows it's the French, I would be appalled if he doesn't redirect that second Men-at-Arms over this way as well.
Oh, yeah, you'd have to imagine he could. Those French peasants obviously have to run for their lives. And what I would assume, just because we're just about 2 minutes into the game, he only had 3 villagers on gold. I'm not really sure if he was able to get the amount of gold to age up, which could be huge.
Yeah, and it does look like School of Cavalry is on its way, so enough gold there, but probably not enough for a knight, and that is exactly the truth. There is 60 gold in the bank. The other Men-at-Arms actually pressuring the Ottomans, and makes it very difficult for the Ottoman player as well. The spear, you can see, has to pull back instead of pressuring the opposite side French, and that is one of the biggest benefits that goes unnoticed.
Right, because what does that mean, right? With the Ottoman spearmen having to come up, that means that YuiMetal on the other side, he had a completely untouched French feudal age. He'll be able to get the gold that he needs for the night, and it really sets the tone. Once we get to about 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes, one side has a couple knights, the other side might only have one, might be forced to make a horseman, God forbid, something like that for the French player. You see a French horseman 5 minutes into the game, you know you're having a bad time.
Yeah, and it's not only going to be the knights. We can already see that over on the other side, Yui was getting enough gold. He was dropping the mill, so wheelbarrow is going to be on its way. The economy is going to start being stronger as well, and that allows those villagers to react to any potential raids more efficiently. We can see the first little engagement of the game. Men-at-Arms just tanking up those spears on the other side, getting as much damage in as possible before making his way on home.
That giant shield really helping him out too, that Vanguard Men-at-Arms. And again, I mean, this is just delaying what ZertoN wanted to do against YuiMetal. And look at what Nushbear has to do now. That gold is so forward. It's basically in another French province. He's got to change his gold all the way to one of the nice things about in a 2v2 setting. You're able to use your teammate's gold. That's what Nushbear had to do.
Yeah, and as our wonderful observer Vaca is pointing out, knight already in queue for the side of YuiMetal, whereas there's a horseman in queue for Knusch. So very, very outclassed, to say the least, starting out this game, and really, really just good ability to start, showing you the Men-at-Arms strength in this dark age.
Yeah, and we know just the rating power of French Knights, right? We can date it back all the way to this game's existence in Season 0, I'd like to call it. Obviously, Nushbear knows that there is some rating potential in that area, going to drop an outpost over there, which is a good idea. Now, if you're Debson, if you're YuiMetal, you got your first knight on the battlefield, where are you going first?
Honestly, anywhere that you're not taking damage is going to be the biggest benefit, but I would always try to just go, even though there's an outpost going up, going towards that French gold, continuing to idle it. The outpost, yes, may be up. He's scouting it out, but you'll start to dive in. villagers have to jump inside. Yeah, scout gets damaged a little bit and you run on by, and this is still just delaying those French knights, delaying French from where it needs to be, because one thing we've noticed, all we have been on is on Knusch and ZertoN's side of the map. That scout going down is much bigger than what realized though, because vision is such a high importance.
Oh yeah, I think it decreases the rating potential of a Royal Knight not having a scout there, because it means you could put yourself in harm's way when the scout might have been able to protect you from that, but it looks like that knight going to be able to go all the way around and kind of avoid the spearman. But this is another thing that YuiMetal is doing a good job with, just with this Royal Knight. It just keeps the Ottoman player in his place. Yeah.
And haven't really gotten to see any units come out to the other side from ZertoN and Knusch. The horseman, the scout on the side, just kind of congregating towards the middle, might actually be finally trying to make the way across towards the towards Yui's side, but first walls already being invested into from the side of Louis.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm surprised that we do see a wall on that side. And also, as we just talk about it, it seems like they're growing exponentially, because I see that big red line on the mini map. So he's going to be trying to wall up just about completely.
Yeah, just allowing himself to full focus his unit mass into one specific positioning. We talked about the immobile English masses. You want to allow them to sit in one place and actually be effective, rather than sit in one place and be just wasted resources. So this will allow you to move forward and not have to just sit at home and not have this huge risk of your eco or huge risk of losing out your military mass.
Yeah, and that really helps with you're playing a civ like the English, where you don't have that mobility. Having those walls just kind of delays, gives you a little bit of extra time. YuiMetal trying to find where that gold mine was a little bit before, but he knows that they're moved. The Ottomans are going to be coming in to help him out with ZertoN. Again, the sound of music going to be helping those Ottoman soldiers out.
And one thing always to focus in on team games is it's the opportunity cost of your rating. I mean, it happens in 1v1s as well, but we can see these knights are forward. So that means that this now allows Knusch to push forward with his own knights, potentially try to do some other raiding, try to find some vulnerable villagers. But if he waits any longer, Yui and Louis, they're about to have their whole entire side walled off almost.
Yeah, and I think just because, and this is kind of, this is the butterfly effect of the Vanguard Men-at-Arms raid in Dark Age, right? So they were able to get map control. They were able to do some raids over on the side of Nushaber and ZertoN, so their economy can be set up. It just begs the question, Dabs, I'm seeing all of these walls. Does that mean we're going to see a market soon?
Nah, I don't think this early. I think that's too much of a risk this early. The Knights, though, not in the greatest position here, and a good amount of damage coming in. These horsemen, they might have been this downfall earlier, but one thing we haven't talked about is their movement speed. They actually have enough to chase down these low-health Knights, and that's going to be a pickup.
Yeah, those horsemen just about an extra, if I had to round, just about an extra 0.2 tiles per second, so they're able to chase those knights down. It looks like that one knight, if I had to guess, is probably about 10 to 15 health. But look at what YuiMetal does very well. It's so important for those French Royal Knights to stay alive. He uses the two that were full health just to kind of get Nushaber's knights and horsemen to worry about that one, so that other one is able to escape. And probably with chivalry later down the road, like it's healing right now, it might be able to escape with its life, but the horsemen are going to track that thing down.
Yep, tracking and down indeed. Knights definitely cutting off the escape wall, proving to be effective, and that is the first knight pickup. One thing Vodka highlighted a second ago was the English player actually defending up Yui's deer, and other knights actually starting to get focused on. I think we've just seen the third scout of the game get picked off as well.
Yeah, there have been a lot of dead scouts. And take a look, Nushaber with a nice little raid on the English Empire. LoueMT has to vacate those English farm fields. It looks like one knight will be going down in the process. But Dabs, take a look at the military count right now. The Ottomans having a decent mass of archers. Military count's 51 to 31.
Yeah, letting those military schools just continue to produce, continue to roll up online, cheaper production buildings as well. That is a huge mass, and you can't start diving in on that mass with just your knights now, or else you're going to start slowly getting picked off. You really have to fight in unison together, like we talked about so much before this.
Yeah, and it looks like for Yui and Louis, because I saw a decent amount of his knights over by his base. It looks like they're kind of close to each other. I would like them to kind of conglomerate just a little bit more, just to make sure if they are going to take this fight. I would think now, if you are going to take this fight, and it looks like a charge is going to be coming in soon, for that matter, what special drums, what key are you going to be banging those drums in? Are you thinking more ranged defense because of the longbowmen?
No, I think you want to get out as much DPS as possible in my eyes. Okay. You just are going to want the attack speed ones, because you're going to be focusing in on the longbows on the other side. If you're taking the fight effectively, I mean, the longbows have the range on you. You're going to be taking the damage, and they have enough to one-shot already.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. And Knusch are going to be able to get that. Boar as well on the western side, so it's going to be helping him in the food production. But again, look at the synchronicity, Dabs, the knights and the archers. You swear it's only one player controlling this, with both of them right next to each other.
Yeah, and they are starting to be the aggressors. They are wanting to break through these walls and pressure out the other side, right as Yui moved out onto that board that we saw a second ago. Knights burning through this wall like it is melting through it like it's butter, like you say all the time. And now the eco is fully opened and the armies are moving through.
Yeah, and we'll see what kind of economic damage they could really do. And you could see those knights from YuiMetal just trying to make sure that this mass doesn't get there. But Knusch and ZertoN have the numbers, Dabs. It looks like we might see a skirmish here.
Yeah. Looks like a skirmish indeed, starting to brawl out. The knights are diving, charging in, and the knights clashing on the other side, where the archers and the longbows mass just continuing to snipe each other out. The key is the few spears here. If they can connect on the knights, they can be the vital difference.
Yeah, and there's only just a couple spearmen there. You can see there's about 3 of them, and they started to retreat a little bit. It looks like Louis and Yui are going to be able to get that hold. One of the things, though, for Louis, I'm surprised how well they were able to hold, just because these longbowmen, you can see they're not radiating that aura. They don't have that, godlike form on the outside, so it means there's no network of castles where they're fighting.
No network of castles at all, and it'd be weird for him to almost drop an outpost all the way on that other side. Usually it's going to be more in the center, more taking that map control, and it looks like Yui and Louis think they have enough to take some more of that map control as they are pushing back after the fight on their side.
Yeah, I love this. If you have a good hold, you got to try to push the initiative just a little bit. You can see those knights; they're going to be charging at each other. There's a bunch of Ottoman archers in the back, and it looks like they're focusing the knights instead of that longbow mass.
And absolutely fine, because if we look at the end of this fight, Knusch only has 4-5 knights left into this, and YuiMetal, he's on double digits. This went so well for the side of Louis and Yui. We were talking about, I think when the engagement was first going on their side, there were about 20 or so military difference, and you just mentioned that network of castles bonus, and what do we see here with the army this time?
That is an outpost that will get done pretty easily, just with a couple villagers. So it's so important for the English player, right? You just want to establish that outpost. Just gives you that little bit of a foothold that you can retreat to. That outpost basically just signals, hey, we won this battle, we won this map control, and we're going to make sure you know it.
Yeah, no spears needed to be built in for the English player whatsoever, because the longbow mass is high enough and the knight mass has stayed healthy and stayed numerous. Yui and Louis are looking to make that split, that division between the two teammates. They're slowly moving these outposts further and further forward until there's not really going to be a good spot for the teammates to go. And finally, we're going to see a little bit of economic damage. Another fight engaging. Longbows, archers clashing off, and the knights charging on in. This one in front of the base of ZertoN and Knusch, and it could just be devastating for them. But the knights, they're trading much better this time. Outpost helping on out, and the archer numbers, they're pushing back Louis and Yui this time.
Yeah, and it's crazy just what a couple outposts can do. Now those longbowmen finally with network castles will be able to do some good damage against knights. And it's crazy because both of these ranged masses, both the Ottoman archers and the longbowmen, they've stayed predominantly healthy, where the only thing we're seeing are knight corpses on the battlefield.
Yeah, the big problem now, though, is the lack of mobility for Louis's longbows. They are going to be able to get closed down and chased down by the archers on the other side, and desperately need help from a few of Yui's reinforcing knights. Looks like not going to choose the call to chase down the rest of those longbows, but I feel like this has been a crazy, crazy extended feudal where we just saw all the knights get taken out to less than 5 on either side.
Yeah, and these are some of my favorite games, seeing long feudal games. Just seeing those rock, paper.
And look at this, refreshing the feed. We are back in it, right, picking up where we left off. And I laugh, Castle Age is exactly what is the choice coming out from ZertoN from this Ottoman player.
Yeah, I'll be honest with the MIA. It seems a little ballsy to me because Knusch and ZertoN, they do not have the map control right now.
Oh, but this could just be the perfect timing engagement. The knights aren't here, but the knights of Knusch are circling back around, and the longbows have gotten closed in on by a lot of that knight mass and just thinned out by quite a bit. But main engagement coming in, and this is where we talked about it. The knights on the pink side could just be the difference. Castle Age comes through. And instead, the King's Palace is dropped to match it on up. So it is not going to be that immediate timing dive. It's going to be the match. But one of the things that Ottomans has an advantage on is the military schools now can immediately be producing those better units. Men-at-arms and crossbows for now, but if he gets the next upgrade, it can be a little bit more than just that.
Yeah, having the ability to produce those pretty expensive units out of the military schools can certainly help you. And in Castle Age for the Ottomans, we're seeing the Ottomans play against a French player. Might want to mix in a couple gunpowder units. Maybe we see some Jans in action.
Yeah, Janissaries, they absolutely, it's not a hard counter. It's like probably the hardest counter in the game with how much damage they end up doing to cavalry units. We're starting to see this kiting out happen before the veteran longbows comes through. So this is a fight that heavily favors Knusch and ZertoN right now, as just now veteran archer or veteran longbows comes through, but the number's been thinned out significantly.
Yeah, they have. You can see there's about, on total with Louis, with how many on the map, there's 37 to 39. Another 2 just popped out. But knight count for YuiMetal is a lot higher than Knusch. It's going to make those archers back up, Dabs.
Yeah, they dictate that pace, but there are the Janissaries. There's that ultra hard counter. They're just such short range. They have to stay protected. They have to stay behind the archers because longbows, all they care about now is killing those Jans.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail right on the head when it comes to the range, because the Janissaries really have to come up and try to take down some of these knights. So it makes the sniping potential for those longbowmen just that little bit better. And obviously you can really pick them out. There's a group of archers and maybe there's 7 or 8 Jans or even as many as 10. But one has a gun and the other one doesn't. So it's pretty easy to snipe them out and when you're seeing them in a group.
Yeah, and the way this game has slowly been dictating, you might be looking up at the top and you're like, yeah, it's favoring Yui and Louis, and it's not just favoring on the numbers, it's favoring them on a lot of things other than just that. The map control is really the biggest key here. They've taken the full central point. They forced French all the way to the north corner gold. There's no other gold for French to get, and that was so much walking time, so much delay. We have talked about the knight numbers. Well, Yui's had so many more knights because of the idle time, because of all this, delay and force onto the French gold. But now it's going to be food focus as well. They're taking the deer, they're taking berries all throughout the map. Whereas Knusch and ZertoN, they're stuck behind their walls on their last bits of food.
Yeah, and what does that mean for especially the French player like Knusch? They have some of their last guy food resources that are out there. It means they got to do a farm transition.
Mangonel shot over there on the hill. wants to go ahead and move forward to get that second one, and that heat-seeking rocks just barely does not connect on the second one. But looks like we're starting to see some action come out from ZertoN and Knusch trying to push forward and break out of that hill like we were just talking about.
Yeah, it looks like they are, and ZertoN and Knusch, they do. This isn't Star Wars Episode 3, Debs, but they do have the high ground.
They have the high ground, but I saw one mass of Yui's Knights, and then we just saw Vodka move to another mass. I thought one of them was good enough to be his army, but he has two massive joints together, and he went Castle Age, whereas Knusch is stuck in Feudal. Once he gets those royal knights or royal bloodlines, if he has enough gold to do so, they can have this timing where Knusch is just now getting up to castle.
Yeah, with Yui going to be able to get the royal bloodlines just a little bit quicker. I like to call them pseudo-imperial knights, right? Because they have the royal bloodlines. They start at 230 health, obviously being in Castle Age, but with royal bloodlines, they get up to 310. And with 310 health, they could take a couple more Janissary shots. Not to say that it's not a good counter to them, but it could provide a better front line.
And look at how desperate for food they are. We just saw like 20-something Vils go back out to those deer. Pretty sure, yep, Springolds are into the mix for Louis. I was going to mention that Mangonel is going to be the key factor in these fights, but now the Mangonel is kind of at this like chokehold. It can't push forward because if it does, the Springold will just force its way in and snipe it out before any damage really gets done.
Yeah, and this is pretty much the age-old transition when we get to Castle Age, right? Now that all of these civilizations are Castle Age, it becomes more of a siege superiority kind of thing. ZertoN, obviously, with the MIA, is going to be able to get some of those for free. He's got two Mangonels there. They get some good shots on a longbow, and it could be game-ending. So the English player has to follow suit and make a couple Springolds. It might benefit these guys to make a couple Mangonels themselves because there is quite the ranged mass from ZertoN.
Yeah, but think about how much delay and idle time that just was for those Vils from ZertoN. All of his food income, he's just not being able to produce as much from the other side. Mangonel shot doesn't quite connect as juicy as it could have been, but we are now splitting in between the two bases, the exact positioning point that you want to be at. Do not allow reinforcements to join in together. Double Mangonel shots, again, pretty solid dive surrounding his own Mangonels with his range mass, and the Knights are charging on in, but who takes the cake here? The Knight numbers, they're so healthy for Yui, but there are Janissaries on the backside, and those Janissaries, the pink, there's just so much pink getting wiped. It looks so good.
There are all Knight corpses. That's all it is on that front line. The Janissaries they're just turning this Knight mass into target practice, Dabston.
Yeah, still a couple of pink Knights available, though. The whole time, the English mass just proving to be too strong. Had some crossbows into the mix to help out with the Knights on the other side. And all of a sudden, we look, and Knusch doesn't have any left, and ZertoN is having to fall back because Yui just still has a few more Knight corpses, and that is all it is. It is over.
Wow, that was crazy. And you could see on the match complete a nice little mango shot at the end, hitting those those archers and jazz were kind of an insult to injury. But let's take a look at the tail of the tape here between these guys. ZertoN got hit with a decent amount of villager raids. Look at his vill count at the end, Debs. He was below 60.
Yeah, it was, we saw those deer villagers in the middle. We saw a couple of hits earlier on his gold, building that outpost when the longbows move forward. And it's that little bit of trickle that starts to add up. Not only that, Louis and Yui invested into eco behind it. We had the King's Palace, so the longer that went, the better his eco went. And it seemed like Yui also had an extra town center himself at some point.
Yeah, I think you're right, too. And we could see, obviously, with the military count as well, Knusch and ZertoN pretty much getting wiped out. And it looks like Knusch had pretty much no knights. It was difficult for him, especially with all of the ranged mass from Louis. You could see how well it stayed alive. From military count, he had somewhere around 70 is what the tape's going to show. it's going to be difficult, especially when you get on top of that Ottoman production, and they were just about on top of the MIA. They were going to end up finding that production a little bit later. The Ottomans are never going to be able to mass up again, right? So your villagers are just going to continue to be idle. They're continue to sit inside the town center. There's really not much that you can do. So a good GG, a good call from ZertoN and Knusch. So taking a look at our screen right now, looking at this series, that was our very first game of the day. Louis and Yui with a 1-0 lead. And now, Dabson, we're going to be on the driest of rivers for game number 2.
Yeah, very similar map. I remember when these first two came out, I got them constantly confused because they came out together and they have a very similar thumbnail, but kind of similar idea, similar structure. But the difference here with Dry River, if my memory serves, is there's these little ponds in the middle that have some shoreline fish that's available for some gathering.
Yeah, a little bit of seafood never hurts anybody, and especially with the civilizations that they are going for right now. We did see Ottomans and English in the last games, played by different players, of course, but we're going to be seeing an introduction to the Delhi Sultanate. And how do you feel about Delhi on this map?
Yeah, so one of the things that I feel like I constantly forget about, and it's one that you don't really encounter often, is that Delhi fishing ships can shoot. So you'll actually see a decent amount of people go ahead and dock up on this map with those Delhi fishing ships, because then it doesn't allow someone such as Ottomans to go with early spears and really deny those docks, because all you really have to do is shoot them on a round. So Delhi very strong here, as well as having that sacred site control. You have your one on your side, and then you're going to have the middle one that's really going to be the contesting point of, you know, who can get that extra bit of gold income, hit that earlier castle timing, and take that map control and just take the game exactly like we just saw.
Yeah, I'm really glad you talked about the Delhi fishing boats in general, because we talk about water and how water is played on different maps. You know, when you have a map like Golden Heights, that little bit of water really dictates how Dark Age, Feudal Age is played. When it's something like a Dry River, it's not only the fact that water exists, but it's the geography of the water. You know, when you have a small pond like that, it's not like another civilization or an opponent civilization is going to drop a dock there with you. You know, so those Delhi fishing boats just end up being that little brigade of map control, and then you're able to get a little bit of fish at the same time. It's really good for Delhi. That's why I agree with you. I really like this pick.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll see exactly what you mentioned. Not two people dropping docks together. You'll kind of see this split map where one player has one half of the map, or two players have one half of the map with their docks. They got, you know, 3 ponds with 3 docks in it. The other side has 3 ponds with 3 docks in it. And that's just kind of how it plays out. You want to try to pressure, try to deny, but a lot of times it comes to this point where it's like, all right, you have your fishing, we have ours, and let's just start duking it out and headbutting each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine we're going to see some headbutting in this one as well. And I think it's important too, with these docks and getting that little bit of food income, a little bit of sushi in your belly, is you taking resources and the units that you're going to make in feudal a little bit more expensive than they used to be. The Delhi, they don't just have normal horsemen anymore. They have Gazi Raiders that are just that little bit more expensive. So it means you got to have a little bit more food income if you want to constantly produce them. So it's really synergistic.
Yeah, it definitely is. But those Gazi Raiders, I like how you mentioned those, because they are a unit. Same thing with the Sipahi goes. Since this last update, both the Sipahi and Gazi Raiders are just so fun to utilize, so fun to kind of have their strengths, have their little slight differences from typical horsemen, and shows you where you can have these advantages. Obviously, I'll pick on the side of Delhi and Ottomans. Those Gazi Raiders, if we do see some earlier men-at-arms from English, whether it's Dark or whether it's in Feudal Age, not going to be as effective, because they can get wiped very, very easily and effectively by those Gazi Raiders.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a wonderfully powerful Feudal Age unit going up against something like early men-at-arms. Obviously, if the English decide to make things like knights in Castle Age, Gazi Raiders might not stack up as well. I mean, they just have the, if I remember correctly, it's just +3, right, to those heavily armored units. So knights They are able to hold their own against Gazi Raiders, but at least that was a big problem for the Delhi Sultanate that the AoE dev team decided to make a change to going into season 5 was, especially when you saw a Delhi up against an HRE. If somebody was able to make armored units in Feudal Age for the Delhi, you were just like, well, I don't really have anything for this.
Yeah.
You know, so having the ability to get that little bit of extra damage to those armored units means that they can hold their own in Feudal a little bit better. So we'll see if the English Empire even wants to make men-at-arms in the first place, or if spearmen are just going to be better for them.
Yeah, I think they might have a little bit higher base damage, but don't quote me on this. I'm not on the dev team. I don't know the ins and outs of all the patch notes, although I do have a good knowledge of it. I want to say it's 3 extra base damage, but like our regular horsemen like 9 and the Gazi Raiders are 12, I think is what it is.
That's I believe you're correct.
Okay,
yeah.
So there we go. So even a little bit better trading against regular horsemen, everything out there. But forget all Gazi Raider talk. Forget all that talk. Early on, it's going to be about trying to control fishing. If there's one thing I've learned about fish on an AoE 4 map is that you have to take it or deny your opponents, or else you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. And again, we're going to talk about, even though this map is probably about anywhere from 2 to 3% water, but it's 100% the difference, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and we should be getting into it in just a second. Louis and Yui were able to take game number 1 in that extended feudal age aggression, closed it out in Castle, but how will the next game play out in game number 2? Will they go up 2-0 and maybe make a quick series of this leading up into the third game, or can ZertoN and Knusch tie it up?
Yeah, and I'm hearing some of the sounds in the background, so I'm guessing this game is going to get started very quickly. Game number 2. We have Knuschelbear, as you can see right here, spawning in as the English. His teammate, ZertoN, playing as the Delhi Sultanate, spawning over there on the southeast side. And Dabson, who are they playing against?
Yeah, so on the opposite side, we got YuiMetal and LoueMT, as we call them, Louis and Yui. Much easier, nicer to say over there. And over as far as these map spawns go, does anything jump out onto the page to you? Is anything glaringly advantageous or I would say disadvantageous?
Let's take a look. I mean, Vodka's doing a good job of observing this little bit of infestation of deer that we have here. Those couple of deer patches spawning right next to each other. Let's see. I mean, what's really nice for Knuschelbear, I mean, he is playing as the English, but he's got a back gold, which is certainly going to help him out. And it looks like for YuiMetal, for the Ottoman side, looks like based on the minimap, he's got some resources that are pretty spread out.
Yeah, absolutely true. But looking now, just kind of seeing the pawns in the mid-map and who went for the water, it does look to be both Delhi players are on the same side, and that means both players are going to be fighting over the same pawns. It's not going to be this split map like I was talking about, because the Delhi, they're both the ones that are wanting to go fishing, while their teammates are going for that quicker feudal timing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really nice for your teammate, you know, who's not playing the Delhi Sultanate, because you're going out there, you're getting your dock, you're getting your fishing boats, you're trying to establish some kind of map presence, especially in the middle of the map, where in the back you can kind of just hang out. You know, you could be in the back, you can get to feudal, you could do the things that you need to do to establish that good feudal age presence. It is very interesting to me though, Dabs, and I think it's just because of the spawns. You know, we have Louis and ZertoN, both of the Delhi players, spawning right across from each other, so we might see a little bit earlier contestation than we initially thought.
Yeah, and it's going to be all about that third pawn. They're going to want the one in the middle of them. Obviously, they could move out to the farther one, but as you move out farther, it gets harder for you to protect, and you want to be able to control yourself and not just have to rely on your teammate. It is a team game, so the team aspect matters quite a bit, but you still want as much control as possible. Speaking of that control, we already can see that teammate is the one coming to help out just in case there's any pressure on Louis' dock.
Oh man, these guys these guys are probably best friends. You know, I can tell you what, Dabs, if we were playing a 2v2 and you did that with your first spearman, I'd probably pay you. You know, you can't get that amount of bouncer work just from any old guy. But that spearman going to be able to help him out on that. And YuiMetal going to be going for the twin minaret madrasa, as all good Ottoman players do. Nushaber going to be going with the council hall. And for him, getting to feudal age as quickly as possible, this is going to be a rather impressive feudal age time for him. And it's important because you're going to need longbowmen to try to snipe down those enemy fishing boats.
Yeah, not only the fishing boats, the few spears that have come out are going to be way less effective if longbows are on the field and at them early and often, because spears get cleaned up, they have to back on away. Then the longbows, they can just start harassing, being annoying, and going really where they want to out on the map.
Yeah, and I think we might see how important this plays out, right? Nushaber at about 4 minutes hitting that Council Hall, which is a rather impressive time. Already has 3 longbowmen in the queue. Obviously, he knows where that enemy dock is, and that's going to be his first go-to. I'm very curious to see now with those longbowmen harassing this middle pond. If you're Louis, for the Delhi Sultanate, especially in Dark Age, sometimes wood is a little bit hard to come by. You got to be thinking about putting things like moss down. You got to be thinking about all that kind of stuff. So is he going to go to some of those northern ponds to try to get that fish?
Well, one of the things I've kind of just been noticing by looking at the mini-map is ZertoN moved out to that next pond. The longbows are coming. The spears aren't going to be able to protect this, but there's only 3 ships. They can just jump inside that dock and not have a worry about it. Yes, it idles it, but it's at least not losing your economy for the long term. And I'm assuming that we're just going to see a few Sipahi come out to deal with those longbows pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a little temporary, exactly like you said. Those fishing boats now just starting to take damage for the first time, and probably will pack in to that dock. Now, LoueMT did put a different dock down all the way on the north side. ZertoN going to be adding the second dock, but here's a little bit of a difference in how both Delhi players are going to be playing. LoueMT going for the Tower of Victory, ZertoN going for the Dome.
Yeah, that is definitely a huge difference, as Tower of Victory, when these battles happen, especially if it's this extended feudal archer mass that we have seen plenty of times, that Tower of Victory is going to be a huge difference. That Dome of the Faith, though, going to help out in quicker castle age, cheaper scholars, all that sort. And I love seeing the micro come out of Louis on this dock. It's funny. I see pro players do this all the time, and then I try to do it, and I end up losing all 3 fishing ships.
Yep, I know. It just every time you try to garrison something, I swear I feel the same way. You just kind of fat finger it, right? But I actually really like this Dome of the Faith choice by ZertoN, because his food and what he's doing with his docks, they're getting relatively untouched. So maybe with that dome, it means he can get a quicker castle age.
Yeah, he's really kind of going untouched. The longbows are the main focus, and the longbow number, it's not something to joke around about, as we already saw that scout, that Sipahi, have to run on away and not even try to take the fight, even though being the counter unit. But look, now that feudal age has come, there is a nice archer ship. Even though I think the longbows outrange it by like half a tile, but it's one of these push-pull games where you just back away with the archer ship, the longbows have to step up, and then you're able to fire back down.
You know, it's nice for the team of Nushaber and ZertoN that you made Louis have to get an archer ship. That's resources that he would rather spend elsewhere, trying to get some land military units to try to help the Sipahi by YuiMetal, because for right now, it's just YuiMetal with a couple of Sipahi. I think there's 4 total, 1 in the queue, trying to get some raids on these areas, and it looks like he's coming up dry here.
Yeah, hasn't really been able to find any success as of now. That archer ship may be able to get a tiny bit more damage, but the first outpost going up, not only does this provide a significant amount of vision for Knusch, potential denial in the middle, but it provides that network of castles bonus. And right as you were talking about the unsuccessful raids, we see a successful raid.
Yeah, it's Caster's curse, that's for sure. But the Sipahi will be able to just kind of, get Nushabear to get off of those farm fields, longbowmen with actually some good damage against that archer ship. All 3 of those fishing boats have to stop what they're doing. Dabs, it's just more and more idle time.
A ton of idle time that has been caused in Louis' fishing, and not really any that has been caused in ZertoN's. The outpost goes up, the longbow's just continuing to move forward. They've taken little bits of damage here and there, but really not too much that has been effective, and it looks like this archer ship, it's going to be going down unless it gets enough healing, and it does not get enough healing. The archer ship has fallen, a fishing ship falls after that. It is about to just be hectic momentum, it seems, for Knusch and ZertoN.
Yeah, really bad if you're a Yui and Louis fan right now with those fishing boats. One of them fishing boats and then the one archer ship going to be going down. You can see that Louis is trying to get to other areas, you know, trying to get to these other ponds. You can see Vodka going over there. There's a couple of them. There's even an archer ship over there too that he had to spend. He'd rather just be making fishing boats. He'd rather just be making units. He doesn't have the ability to do that, and it's showing in the military count right now. It's 38 to 25.
Yeah, and one of the things we haven't been able to highlight is 14 Gazi Raiders. That you talked about before the game started, how they're a more expensive unit. They're stronger. They have that higher base damage. Well, there's 14 of them now, 16 of them out on the field. This is so scary, and this is what is showing that fishing hasn't been idle, that eco hasn't been idle to ZertoN's, and now he has a huge force.
Yeah, and I mean, he's able, just because of the mobility of the Gazi Raiders, he's going to be able to track down that meta. Those bongos will not be bonging anymore. This archer ship is probably going to go the way of the last archer ship. It's the longbowman mass coming here. Those 3 fishing boats, I don't know if they have enough healing to do so. They're just going to leave that archer ship and turn it into a shipwreck. Sapahi are coming in on the north side. Dab's trying to take down some of these longbowmen, but ZertoN doing such a good job of protecting that archer mass from Nushabear.
Yeah, and one of the things I see in this fight, or I guess I should say I don't see, is red. There's no LoueMT in this fight, and finally the archers arrive. The Gazi Raiders immediately turn. They're just going to go circle that archer mass of the deli, and there's no more red yet again.
Right before, you couldn't even finish that sentence in time. Those archers from LoueMT got absolutely evaporated. There are just too many Gazi Raiders here for the Sapahi, and archer ship from LoueMT trying to help him out, trying to do a good job of trying to take down some of these longbowmen. But again, we're looking at the military count up at the top. You don't necessarily need to see the battle on the screen. You can tell where this fight's going.
Yeah, heavily favoring the side of ZertoN and Knusch. Yeah, the longbow mass might have been cleared up a little bit, but I think they'd rather have 20 Gazi Raiders and 20 longbows, and that is exactly what he has with 6 more in queue. More eco is being denied. Louis is starting to struggle more and more, while ZertoN, he is building more of these walls across the map and has himself untouched.
Yeah, to be honest, it's really interesting why Louis is going for more of an archer base. I understand with the Tower of Victory, I mean, it's going to give him a little bit of help in that regard, but there's a surprising lack of spearmen on the Louis and Yui side, where Nushabear, he just has the 3 or 4 spearmen, and you can see how well they did up against with those Gazi Raiders trying to take down the Sapahi. The Sapahi went down almost as quick as the archers did.
Yeah, and it's cool. This is the point where they won that fight so effectively that he gets to split off a huge mass of Gazi Raiders, do some raiding, and still have a front line for his teammate. This is when Louis and Yui are going to fall behind even further as another raid hits the wood line. 3-4 villagers going down, and the frontline fight is still not going their way.
No, and there's so many Gazi Raiders in the middle here. You see that town center garrisoning 10. Even if you lose 1 or 2 Gazi Raiders, what does it matter? You killed 4 or 5 different Ottoman peasants. You have so much idle time. There's another 10 with a little basket of berries, not knowing what the hell to do out there. They're just standing right next to the town center before they go back to the berry bush. An excellent, successful raid from ZertoN, and the best thing about it, Dabs, he can just do it over and over again.
Yeah, with that mobility. And look at his teammate Knusch this whole time. Has also been hitting eco, being annoying as possible. There's not only an archer ship, it's a demo ship being invested into. Louis has been forced to invest into water military, and that's where ZertoN says, ha, I'll just keep making Gazi Raiders.
Yeah, and Gazi Raiders, he's going to continue to make. I mean, Knusch does have an outpost here, being English, going to have a network castle. Sapaki going to be trying to get a little bit of a charge in, but just those couple spearmen might be able to help him out. But there's a surround. Are we going to see a turnaround here?
And there's the reinforcing mass from ZertoN. It wasn't close as he would have wanted it to be, but it still arrives in time to prove successful, and numbers heavily favoring him. I don't even know. I think he lost one Gazi Raider during that whole fight.
Yeah, I think I only see one dead blue horse on the other side. Another raid going on for LoueMT. Look at all these villagers. I don't think Louis sees it yet. Oh, he just did.
And this struggles. Now his archer production's hurting. His whole military production's hurting. And villagers pulling out the shivs to come help in the fight. There's 39 Gazi Raiders. I think ZertoN can, at this point, just take a 2v1. He could say, Knusch, just take a seat. Go boom up. Do your English team thing. Let me go ahead and end this game.
Not even do your English thing. Go take a nap, brother. I think ZertoN will be able to do it pretty much all of himself. This archer mass is going to get surrounded and get evaporated again. So ZertoN has all of this military, and you can see on the top left part of your screens, you're seeing all of those Delhi serfs running for their lives. He's going up with compound of the defender.
Yeah, so with all of this damage, with all of this military mass, he still is able to hit Castle Age at a great timing because of the sacred sites. They are about to secure the third sacred site.
Yeah, and obviously it's not just about putting the other team on a clock, right? We're not trying to... This game, most likely, if it keeps going this way, is going to end before that 10-minute marker, but it's just that extra gold income. And I'll tell you what, just from Louis' side, if you're a Delhi Sultanate player with no sacred sites, you're a pretty sad Delhi player.
Honestly, if I heard that New Age begin sound happen and all of what has already happened, I would probably go ahead and forfeit. But this is a tournament game. Money is on the line. They do not want to throw in the towel yet. They will fight as long as they can. But Gazi Raiders, they are just spread throughout. There was another raid on the deer in the north. Yui has not been able to get food, not been able to secure his eco. Another 6, 7, maybe even 8 vills going down. These numbers are tilting heavily into the favor of Knusch and ZertoN.
Oh, yeah, and it's not even military, it's eco, right? For how many worker kills that you could see. They just hit 100 on the economic count. ZertoN, obviously, with some of them being fishing boats and getting untouched, I would imagine that food's probably going to run out in due time. But now with these Gazi Raiders going to be going up to that Castle Age upgrade, that demo ship finally exploding, making a nice firework display for all you Americans. That 4th of July is coming up, so you get a little bit of a firework display. But now with these Gazi Raiders going to be going up to Castle.
There's Canada today as well. We got a lot of Canadians here in the next match. Can't forget about them. I believe that's, oh gosh, today, tomorrow? I don't know when it is. I think it's today. But now it's not just Gazi Raiders. Those are Lancers, and villagers are absolutely in for the slaughterhouse. Just not going to be much red left as far as living. It's just going to be a lot of red blood on the ground because there's not much of Louis in for this world.
Yeah, and you saw those villagers for a long time. Well, not long for this world. You are absolutely correct. Louis hits the surrender button first, his teammate soon to follow. And that was pretty, I mean, we kind of saw that one coming.
Yeah, just it was the way that from the very start, whose fishing got denied first. It wasn't even denied. It was idled, not being able to be effective. And then it just turns this massive snowball where ZertoN, never getting touched on the fishing eco, just was so heavily advantaged with his Gazi Raiders.
Yeah, and we could see, I mean, we see that on water maps all the time. Right, when you have, especially, I keep going back to Golden Heights, but Dry River kind of played like it a little bit because you fought so hard for that little bit of pond and that little bit of fishing income, and there's a reason why you fight so hard for it. You take a look at what we saw for the economy that Vodka is showing on screen. You can see it in the military count as well from both of these players. It just means you have more stuff to spend It's creating those extra, I mean, I call them the extra food town centers because that's essentially what they are. When you can get them that quickly, you just have all of those Gazi Raiders, and for Louis and Yui, there was no stopping them Gazis.
Yep. What a good and exciting second game. And that does mean this series will at least be taken to 4, as this is a best of 5 now tied at 1-1.
Yeah, and we were talking about before this series started, we were talking about how evenly matched a lot of these duos are, just because of the ability of how the teams were actually made in the first place. That first game with Louis and Yui, it was kind of, it seemed like in Feudal Age, we had that elongated Feudal Age, and it seemed like they were able to just incrementally get there. And then before you know it, just because it's in a 2v2 setting, and I know we've talked about this off camera a little bit too, where you get an advantage, especially in a 2v2 setting, because there's more variables than a 1v1, that advantage ends up being exponentially greater than in a 1v1 setting, and then you're able to kind of avalanche off of that. ZertoN and Knusch on that last game with the deli getting that fishing eco and all that kind of stuff. We just saw it happen on the other side. So now it's a 1-1. I have no idea how this series is going to end.
Speaking of a 1-1, we have a mirror matchup with the civilizations here for this next matchup. It is Abba Rus versus Abba Rus, and I think this is one where we're going to see 5 TCs on either side.
Yeah, probably. I definitely agree with you. It took, let's see, I think we've been on for about an hour, but first time we're seeing Rus, which I'm very excited about. Paired with the Abbasid dynasty now for you, just because you're more of an experienced 2v2 player than I am. When you have Rus and Abbasid together, what's kind of your strategy against the opponent in a vacuum?
Well, first things first is Rus in general as a civilization is the best one out there. Whether it's 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s, or 4v4s, I feel like Rus is the one-stop shop that across the board fits everything. So Rus is the one that can kind of alter, change, and do what they want. They're going to do the typical Kremlin 2TC and night play. That's almost always what you'll see from the Rus side. The Abba's the one that can be a little bit more, I guess, transitory. They can be more reactive and change up what they want. Obviously, it's multiple TCs is going to be coming into play, but one of the things that you'll see, if they can afford it, is going to be camels. If not, they might end up actually changing and just doing that typical spear archer. It's so hard to talk about Abba because everyone plays it so differently, which is kind of the cool thing about the civilization.
Yeah, that's what I think is really, really cool about some of the changes that they made to the Abbasid dynasty quite recently, and more so in season 4 than in season 5. But I remember when we used to cast games that were Abbasid dynasty, the age-old joke I would make is, okay, this guy's dragging his face across the keyboard, hitting economic wing, and that's pretty much it, because that's what you do with the Abbasid dynasty. Nowadays, you have a little bit of, you got to use a little bit of your neurons. You got to figure out which wing is good against some of the matchups that you have. We see some military wing in Feudal Age. Obviously, we still see some economic wing, of course. And we've seen some experimentation, with trade wing a little bit too, just getting those 3 traders that pop right out. I don't necessarily think this might happen on this particular map, but with the Abbasid, I'm thinking with Rus, just like you said, you go for the Kremlin, you go 2 TCs, and you go knights. You got to be thinking a couple camels might be a good idea, right? Just for a little bit of that unease.
Yeah, the play here, I feel like it's military or eco wing as far as your first age up. There's no, like, as much cool culture can be, it really doesn't give you that much of an advantage in the grander scheme of thing as far as eco goes, just being able to age up a little bit quicker. But what the eco can do is really allow some of the farm transitions and some of the other kind of transitions to be a lot easier. But military wing can really make your TC building safe and make sure that you have those TCs where you want them to be. And that's something that cannot be talked about enough, is location of TC placement. I've seen so many games end because TCs didn't go up in the right spot, or the barbican or defensive structure didn't go up in the right spot, and the military wing allows you to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting when the military wing first started to come about, and a lot of people theory crafted, well, it's like, well, for economic wing, you can make them cheaper and you can get them out quicker and blah, blah, blah. But you're exactly right with the military wing. It's like, yeah, but I get my TC where I want it now. And that seems to be a little bit more advantageous as you progress throughout the game. And obviously for the Abbasid dynasty, having fresh foodstuffs in that main town center, it just means that you're not completely fixed and you're not completely tailored to the economic wing. I see that the overlay is going to be initiated. So our time for stalling is just about coming to an end. We're going to hit this pivotal game 3 in a nice Rus versus Abbasid mirror. You can see Knusch and ZertoN spawning in on the northeast side. We're looking at Knusch now with that hunting cabin ZertoN with the Abbasid dynasty going for the berries first instead of the sheep. And Dabston, who are they playing against before I ask you a question about that?
Before you ask a question, it is Yui and Louie on the other side. And one thing, maybe I haven't seen this map as much, but I feel like these spawns are so close together to the teammates. It's hard to actually focus one person, as you can see almost the other player's resources in the same screen. So that is I don't really even know what to say here. It just, I haven't seen this one played out too much.
No, I'm not used to, I mean, I kind of see, if I spawned into this map, I'd be like, bro, like I need, you're in my personal space. Get out of here.
I'd probably say something was glitched, but you know, who cares? Early in the game here, the main thing we're going to be looking at is, we're already seeing it. It's the bounty game. Sometimes you'll actually see some teammates help out even more, because this early bounty, it's snowbally. It's very, very snowbally. You want to hit the 250 mark, but more importantly, you just want to get more bounty than your opponent does, because that gives you more gold to use in your disposal.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously you're talking about 250, hitting that, the second tier of the bounty is fantastic, but just getting enough to get wheelbarrow also is important in Dark Age too. Obviously, if you're going to be going out to get some of those Gaia food resources and those deer that you have slain in Dark Age, you're going to want to be able to harvest from them. Getting wheelbarrow, just getting those villagers out a little bit quicker is really helpful for you. And it looks like basically a lot of the times in a 2v2 setting, the 250 is usually ending up getting hit by both players, regardless of if there's 2 Rus on the map.
Oh yeah, it's a lot easier to just pick up all the bounty. There's extra deer, there's the wolves that you're seeing get picked up as well, that are the more valuable bounty resource to hit. And both players just, you know, sitting above that 250 mark. But you want wheelbarrow, you want to be able to hit double broad axe once you hit to Feudal Age as well. And the extra gold just means extra knights. I love that reposition. It might not seem like much, but that actually helps his teammates' gold vein, like, significantly. He now has that extra kind of half tile to help out protect his teammate, protect that next set of berries. And it's eco wing versus military wing, so it is a mirror matchup, but we're already seeing the first big difference of this game.
Yeah, and this is one of the things, especially because this is the first mirror that we've casted so far, everything that happens differently out of these two guys, it has exponential differences. So with the military wing from YuiMetal, maybe not only is, if they see an economic wing coming out from ZertoN, maybe with those 2 archers and 2 spearmen that come out, he gets a little more cheeky with them. He gets a little more aggressive with them instead, and he'll be able to have a second town center, being able to place just about wherever he wants to. I love how you talked about the Kremlin as well, because not only you got the berries behind it, also that's really going to help him out. And we'll be able to see when the Kremlin actually gets created how much vision it has in the area. Remember, the Kremlin, it does come with its own improvements without getting the necessary technology or spending the technology. So it's got castle watch, it's got castle turret, so it's going to be able to see if anything's going on the front side of both of these guys' bases. You're right, the placement's fantastic.
Yeah, Yui is already on stone, so you can see how he is planning on that quicker secondary TC. However, the military wing units, gonna be hard to be effective with that Kremlin placement. The only really spot that I could see him actually finding success is Abba Stone all the way on the other side, or if he positions those 2 archers just towards the left side of the gold vein on the opposite side of that Kremlin. But I don't even think gold's going to even be gathered by ZertoN at this point. Probably just pulling off, going full for that secondary town center quicker.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. I mean, you could speak to this more than I can, being an Abbasid player such as yourself. As far as, you know, you get the gold that you need for the initial first couple feudal age technologies, and then to go up to feudal age, and then, you know, you pretty much kind of leave it for a while. So the fact that it's a little bit forward, you know, maybe not that big of a deal. We have all 4 scouts of all 4 colors in the same place, trying to get an idea of just what the hell is going on from some of these guys, but is going to be able to see those spearmen and those archers. They might be going to that stone, Dabs. You might have called it.
Yeah, it's the only place that he can actually do any damage whatsoever. But one thing we already see out on the field from ZertoN is an archery range himself. He not only has 1 archer, he has 2 archers out, and all he needs is a third to fully counteract that whole entire military wing.
Yeah, which is kind of uncanny how much, you know, you spend your entire feudal age up to try to get military wing. Ooh, look at that, Dabs.
Pro
As
scouts.
Vodka just alluded to. Professional scouts in a round of 8 tournament. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, it's I was casting B play with Anatan the other day, and he played Rus all 3 games I watched him, and he did professional scouts all 3 games that I watched him. And so we're already seeing that here. One of the things that this does is it denies food from your opponent later in the game. It's one of these earlier on, yes, it gives you the extra food income. It gives you this extra bonus as far as your gathering rate goes. But in the middle game, in this longer game, it gives you these better timings because your opponent might not have that deer to fall back to.
And it makes so much sense in a 2v2 setting too, right? Just because there's more deer out there. You know, your professional scouts, it is a little bit more expensive than it used to be, but you're going to be able to get more deer packs with it too.
Yep, and we have gotten to the point where teal has 2 TCs, blue has 2 TCs, pink has 2 TCs, and red is dropping his second TC. So it is so far to the point where there's 4 total town centers. I said I expect at least 5 on either side. So we'll see if we get to that point or if it will just stick out where we're at now.
Well, there is one side that did go economic wing, so they might be able to get that 3rd town center, like you alluded to. But look at what Vodka showed a little bit on the eastern side. Neutral Bear actually walling off some of those deer so they don't get picked off, and he will be having some of that food source, because you're exactly right. When there's, especially for a Rus player, if there's not a lot of Gaia food resources out there, it just means you have to make farms quicker, and you really don't want to do that.
I feel like that's one of the best things about being Rus is the deer, is the boar, and all of these resources that you're like, hey, I'm not on farms, and then like every now and then you find yourself on berries. But ultimately, when you have that farm transition, usually it's super easy for you because you've put so much pressure. You're already at 100 vils, and then you have all your extra wood income that you're like, let me just drop 20 farms real quick.
Yeah, and I know from, you know, just playing this game and making a farm transition and stockpiling 2,000 wood, probably not the best idea, but for the Rus, they're going to be able to do that, right? You don't need to necessarily incrementally get your farms out, you know, just because of how good their wood economy is. But now we're seeing just an establishment of a little bit of a map presence. You did correctly hit the nail on the head in terms of town centers, Dabs. I'm looking at the mini map, and there's 5 total on both sides.
Look at that. I mean, I'm not too surprised by it. It's just kind of what these civilizations both do. Rus goes 2 TCs into Knights, and Abba likes to go 3 if you can, but in the matchups, you know you can in this one. A Vil pickup, though, coming on in, so villager counts are dead even up at the top. Military counts are just now starting to climb, so this is really when we've gotten through all of our talking, all of our just BSing around. Now's when the action's about to start happening. Now's when the game's about to start opening up.
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, now that their economies have kind of settled and they got to doing what they're doing, we're also seeing more walls. So even though, I mean, you are telling me, hey, like, this is when things are going to happen. We're going to see some military action. We're going to see something. both of these teams are trying to not let that happen as much as possible because we're seeing more walls around the gates.
God, I would love to see a chop through and a deer steal over there. He just saw that Knusch is full committing to that deer pack. Not full committing, but sending a huge amount of villagers over to that deer pack. And if he could be able to steal that, he doesn't even need to kill the vills, but steal it, that's so much denial and idle time that he would have caused. But had to pull back away with those scouts, just as the knights are circling back towards home as well from Knusch.
Yeah, I like what both of these civilizations are doing. I mean, I could see that for the Abbasid dynasty also, I'm seeing a camel archer in the queue. So we'll be able to get a little bit unease from Yui's side, which is super helpful against a civ like the Rus, who's going to make knights. ZertoN's actually going to be the first one to go up to Castle Age and is going to be hitting that military wing. And that means instead of those 2 spears and those 2 archers, we're going to see a camel boy coming out.
Not just one camel boy. We got multiple camel boys that pop on out of there. Super, super strong, and will immediately be that countered out unit of knights on the other side, which we actually haven't seen a ton of roaming around from Louis, but I feel like they are somewhere out on this map.
Yeah, which kind of begs the question if something like a military wing to start was the choice to make, because it seems like for ZertoN going economic wing and getting his 3 town centers, he's getting his crescents being more fertile than the opposite Abbasid dynasty. It means maybe it could pay off a little bit more in the longer run. But LoueMT just being an absolutely great teammate with those professional scouts. You can see where he's dropping them. He's dropping them on Yui's town centers.
Yeah, I mean, nothing is better when you're any civilization. I don't care if you're Abba, English even, and you start getting deer dropped off at your town center. You're like, oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, this game's awesome. You just get that smile on your face. You get all excited now. But look at Knusch just circling around the map, picking up all of this extra bounty. We just saw him take down one of the boars that he sent his villagers on. Well, this is the one on the opposite side of the map. He's not going to be gathering that, but he wants that bounty.
Oh, yeah. Free 75 gold is free 75 gold, no matter how you slice it. And he will get up to, even though he's at 485, he will get up to 500 because he's going up with the high trade house. And Dabs, that's a pretty good looking spot.
Yeah, I like the spot. And if he had another 15 bounty, which he'll be able to get in just no time at all, he'll be cracking that 500 mark.
Yeah, that's gonna be quite the high trade house. And actually, I was a huge Abbey of the Trinity fan. I loved the Abbey just because I'm a big fan of Saint's Blessing. But when you have a high trade house and the changes that they made to it most recently, and being at 500 bounty and doing that, it's so good. And now Nushabear with that little bit of a raid over there on the north side. Looks like Yui trying to go out for those berries a little bit out front. Some of those food resources at home must have been running out.
Yeah, and this is not the greatest timing as both Knusch and ZertoN hit Castle Age, but Knusch is the one that's putting on the aggression. He's the one who has knights on the other side of the map, getting a few more Vil kills and just kind of eking out this lead, but also forcing the knights of Louis to be on his side of the map and not on their opponents.
Yeah, and this really helps, especially in Castle Age for both Rus players trying to get relics, right? Just making sure if you're taking fights in the other player's base, it just means they're not out in the middle of the map trying to get those relics. And it looks like Louis is going to be trying to get them a little bit more than Nushabear because he does go with the Abbey.
Yeah, I will say that the high trade house gives you immediate gold. So even though you might be able to, get those, warrior monks out quicker, immediate gold is something that can't be spoken of. And as far as immediate gold, it's 190. I don't know if we've gone a full minute, so it might be 380, or it might just be 190. I think it's just 190. But that being said, you can always drop a monastery and go out and grab the relics later on and still have that high trade house that's not only giving you that gold, but also increasing your bounty, giving you deer over time.
Right, and that instant gold gives you the gold economy to make warrior monks even though they're full price, because they are quite the expensive unit. I mean, Abbey of the Trinity, you get them at half cost, but you don't seem to something like high trade house. If that is 190, he's getting 2.5 relics pretty much as soon as he just made the building. While Louis's got to go out and get him. It looks like ZertoN's trying to get some relics too. That's an Abbasid Imam going down. Not enough prayers to save its life. But that relic, a little bit of, I like speaking with an American caster because they know what I'm talking about, but that relic going to gain a little bit of field position.
There you go. Oh my gosh. Well, luckily enough for ZertoN, the villagers didn't get spotted out, at least at first, but might have been moving back to try to get the berries for a second round, and denying himself from quite a bit of food. And oh my, behind this, he actually dropped a 4th town center. So
You know,
it's 6. He had to prove me wrong. I had to be wrong.
I mean, I'll round up for you, man. I mean, we could do, we could say.
I guess I said at
6.
least 5. I said at least 5. So we'll go with 6.
Now with ZertoN, I mean, obviously, yeah, he did add the town center, but look at his army composition right now, and you can see it. Everybody back home, you can see it on the top left part of your screen, going more in the Gulam direction. It looks like YuiMetal has been doing that too, but he has a consistent archer mass. You can see those knights trying to attack each other, but there is one ZertoN camel, which makes all the difference. LoueMT has to run away. What do you think about going Gulam heavy in a situation where there's a lot of mobility on the battlefield? There's a lot of knights out here.
I find Gulams almost. I find going Gulam heavy like this almost like HRE Burgrave. It has its timing, and the earlier it is, it's the better. But then all of a sudden, you're gonna be matched against crossbows and camel archers or whatever it may be, or knights on the other side, and then your Gulams feel worthless.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't seen them make a considerable difference as of right now. Knusch getting those knights caught right where he doesn't want them, has to go around the other way. Now, military count 85 to 64 in favor of the Chinese brethren, and it looks like they're kind of making that little stronghold over there in the middle. They just have, you know, that middle sacred site, and they put an outpost over there. They're trying to bring their forces together, trying to take down that fortified palisade gate of Knusch. So ZertoN went economic wing. He went 4 town centers, but now someone's coming to knock down the door.
Yeah, and it is a big force knocking on the door. Louis and Yui are ready and in unison, moving forward together, just burning down houses, doing what they can. You can see ZertoN knowing he needs to go ahead and get some Springolds to deal with the Mangonel on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in the first game that we saw. Once Castle Age hits, you got to talk about siege superiority. And now with those 2 Springolds, he actually does have a little bit of siege superiority. And Mangonel's going to get popped like firewood.
Immediately is able to take out the Mangonel, trade Springold for Springold, which is absolutely okay in their eyes. But the main engagement's happening right on side of one of the secondary TCs. And I mean, looking at the numbers, it looks like it's Louis favored. There is 1 camel here for Louis and Yui to provide that camel unease, and will that just be enough? Militia have been called, though. Numbers going to be helping out significantly on that front line, but there's so much pink from Louis that has just been non-stop firing on the backside of this.
Yeah, I think a lot of this ranged mass that Yui now has to back up with, a decent amount of them were archers. It looks like he's trying to get his crossbowman mass up a little bit too, but 2 to 1 almost in terms of archer to crossbowman ratio. The problem is there's just no front line, so he's not going to be able to push up too much. But one thing I will say for both of these Rus players, I'm not seeing a single Saint's Blessing here, and I'm getting upset.
Yeah, you are a big advocate of that Saint's Blessing, and I know you hate to see none of it, but Louis and Yui still thinking they have this fight, still thinking they have the numbers. Camel is still here, and I don't care if you got all archers. If you're facing the ranged mass, if you're microing your archers into the range on the other side, it is totally fine, and that's all there is left from Knusch and ZertoN. There is no front line.
No, but Louis has his own temporary front line. As you can see that the 2nd town center or 3rd town center, whichever one it was, going down by all of those Kremlin militia and those Bardishas. Obviously, he took that Kremlin, got all of those gremlins, fed them after midnight, and now they're starting to come out and try to hit these guys down. Big mangonel shot from that. A lot of crossbowmen and archers at about half damage. It's going to make them scared. They're going to rerun with their tail between their legs. And you saw that gets me every time. With all of those militia on the south side, the clock just struck midnight on them and they hit their ground.
We see a little bit of a keep standoff on the western side, but the key that is starting to run out again and again is going to be the resources. Knusch and ZertoN are kind of walled themselves in. They have a couple golds left. They're on their last little bits of resources on food, so farm transition will start to be a necessity.
Yeah, and I think now that both of these players, if I remember correctly, with ZertoN going economic wing first and then military wing secondarily, he does have the ability to, because of those crescents being fertile, those farms are a little bit less expensive. Look at that tribute.
I mean, 1,000 food, that is nothing to joke around about. So, and there's that, we have seen a farm transition. ZertoN has slowly been doing it behind this, just with the ability to do so a lot easier, like you were saying, with that economic wing. But we are seeing a lot more of an investment into this keep, into this mid-map control from Louis and Yui.
Yeah, and I think this middle point, this is when we start to get to, now the Imperial Ages are starting to come out, right? Yui going with the trade wing, ZertoN going with the culture wing. I really like going culture wing and Imperial Age for the Abbasid, just because those Imperial Age technologies, they're so expensive. Having 700 gold without the rebate, having 700 gold, but having the preservation and knowledge, making sure you're writing all that stuff down, just means that gold is a little bit cheaper. And with this trade wing now, I think we're starting to buckle up for a long game here, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, you say that, yeah, you'd like to have the cheaper techs, but how about infinite gold and other resources with it? And we can already see how heavy of a trade Louis is, or I think it's Louis transitioning into it as well, dropping markets all the way in that western side of the map.
Yeah, you can see the little string of about 4 or 5 of them. Knusch trying to get those fortified palisade walls over here in the middle. I don't think they're going to get necessarily completed, but Knusch is going to be the first one out of the Rus players to go for Imperial Age. Going to be dropping that high armory, and I think that means, even though ZertoN's got a ram here trying to take down this keep, we might be able to see some wandering towns pretty soon.
Good old wandering towns. The Imperial Age rams are, I mean, they're some of the most disgusting things in this game, I'm not gonna lie. It is crazy seeing how much damage some of these rams can do, especially those Rus rams.
Oh, I mean, they're called towns for a reason, because they really, I mean, they should call them wandering trucks, because they really hit you like an 18-wheeler, don't they?
Speaking of an 18-wheeler hitting, ZertoN wanted to make sure that keep was staying alive, and he definitely helped rebuild that keep for quite a bit. Knights circle back, head towards the rams that are hitting his keep, and Louis going to be able to keep it alive for the time being. All of the armies now circling towards this location. It has all of a sudden transitioned from a mid-map fight to all of a sudden the northwest side on top of these two keeps, and all about this 8K gold.
Yeah, and there's a reason why it's so important for YuiMetal just hitting Imperial Age. It means that trade isn't necessarily started yet. So you still need that outside gold and that 8K gold, and also just depriving Knusch and ZertoN of it. Maybe we'll see some a couple more rams coming out trying to take down some of these keeps, but it looks like just with all of those corpses on the ground, as you can see, a little bit of a ceasefire between both of the military counts for both guys. Dabs, they're pretty even right now.
It's amazing how even this game has gone, through all of the craziness, through all the damage, the fighting, the ins and outs, the eco behind this. It's basically even, but this is where the divide has started to happen a little bit more though. One side is full transitioning into the trade boom. The other, they're on the last little bits of gold on the map. There is this, 4K, there is this next 8K, but after those, there's going to be a hard transition to other gold sources.
So I guess my question to you is, when you're talking about the trade transition, does that mean that Louis and Yui are going to be in a more favorable position going into that post-Imperial because they're just trading sooner?
Yes, it will be much easier for them to make this transition, but they are more vulnerable right now for sure. Good thing for them, they haven't gotten anything close to really damage past their walls. They've been on the front foot. They've had a lot of keeps here in this mid-map, which we continue to see this fighting. Knights just heading off against each other. Louis finally reaches Imperial Age himself, and both of the armies, though, are starting to get wiped, and Knusch and ZertoN look like they are going to take this mid-map control and probably take down these keeps in a second.
Yeah, I mean, there's more firepower in the back for ZertoN and Yushaber's armies as well. You see that bombard over there from ZertoN going to be able to take down some of those keeps. There's Ram, there's Mangonel, a couple Springolds too. For Louis and Yui, a surprising lack of siege.
Yeah, really haven't been able to make that transition, and maybe it was just that later Imperial Age. They want that better siege. They want, you know, culverins. They want just anything that has the extra tech advantage on it, such as, you know, those wandering towns like you were talking about too.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a, it's so funny when you get a group of maybe about 6 or 7 of them. They just end up taking down whatever it is, outposts, mining camps, keeps. They take them down in essentially a blink of an eye. Now ZertoN pulling basically an entire province of the Abbasid Caliphate trying to rebuild this keep. It looks like there were 25 villas over there. On the other side, that central keep might end up going down because of a trebuchet. Another keep trying to go up, Dabs.
Yeah, ZertoN is just being willy-nilly with his villagers. Would not want to be one of his villagers this game, as they are trying to be warriors on the front line. But the longer this goes, I feel like the better this is just slowly starting to trend for Yui and Louis. They're still stabilizing this position. They've slowed down this kind of keep crawl and keep push. They still have the 2 sacred sites, and the gold is running lower and lower and lower.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just about time, right? And you can see it on the top part of your screen, too, with the economic count. Louis and Yui have 29 traders. So as long as they're able to just, you know, in the central and in the western point, they don't necessarily need to win those particular battles. They just need to make sure that their economy doesn't get raided to the ends of the earth, because they're going to have trade. Their opponents are not, and then we're going to see a shift.
Yeah, the key here, though, is I feel like just the military prowess of Louis and Yui need to be upgraded. There's still archers on the field. Like, get rid of the archers, get hand cannoneers out there, get camels out there, get knights out there, and siege on the field. Speaking of camel riders, we can see a significant amount of that transition into those pink golden camel riders.
Oh, man, those things... They are wandering towns. You know, we're talking about rams, but how much health one of those golden camel riders have, and Vodka's going to click on it for us. 384 health out of those camel riders. They can take a lot of hits.
Yeah, I'm 384. It's just, it feels like they're almost an elephant over there with how tanky they can end up being. A nice old snipe through the gate there on one of the trebuchets, and Camel's starting to charge. It's crazy that both of those keeps are somehow still alive.
Yeah, for how much battle has been going on the western side, the fact that that 2 keeps are still alive, those camel riders, just having a couple of them going to be able to take down a little bit of siege, which is very important. I am seeing different golden units, though, however. Nushelbear does have elite knights. You can see their elite prowess over there on the top right part of your screen, and has 10 Streltsy in the queue. I was waiting for a Streltsy to show up.
Yeah, but the just bigger problems for Knusch and ZertoN here, it's going to be the gold. You can see how desperately ZertoN needs gold. It looked like he had 50 villagers around that single gold vein, and this keep finally looks like it is on its last limb. More pink units just continually strolling in. There's still those archers on the back line, but the keep falls from Knusch and ZertoN, and now Louis and Yui get to focus on the next one, get to continue to move forward, and it looks like there's a big red mass circling around the north side as well, so I'm scared for the ecos as well.
Yeah, you can see up top, they're quite the mobile units. They are knights, and it looks like ZertoN does see it. He's going to put a gate down. He's going to try to wall over there, but he will need to direct some of his attention into that particular area, and it looks like that keep finally going down. Dabs, for ZertoN, what unit is he going to make now?
You horsemen. I mean, that's the only thing you can try to make. The problem is you get wrecked against camels, you get wrecked against knights, so you can't really make anything. Camel Raiders maybe is an option, but it just costs so much food, so much wood, and I just feel like he doesn't have that stockpile. The Knights are in and through the backside. You can see how much these ecos are about to just start bleeding and start hurting with damage and idle time.
Yeah, a lot of those Abbasid farm fields have to go in the other direction. Look at all of these rams from both of these teams. It looks like YuiMetal's got about 4, LoueMT's got about 3, and they're just looking to take down every building that happens to be in its way. It looks like for ZertoN and Knusch, I mean, Knusch does have some Streltsy, which will help against the Camel Riders, but if you don't have a lot of economy and a lot of those farm fields are ending up getting vacated, I don't know how long he's able to keep production up of that.
Yeah, this is one of those things we were talking about. In the near term, Louis and Yui were going to be struggling at first. Now, yeah, their military masses and their numbers are down, but they're the ones moving forward. They're the ones on the front foot, raiding eco. They're the ones taking down keeps, taking down structures, and still holding and going untouched behind it.
Yeah, and I mean, they're also the ones with about 80 traders, too. That pretty much helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can just replenish your resources, replenish your army composition so quick and easily. This is one of those, all of a sudden you're going to see like 30 archery ranges down for the Rus player, and their Streltsy get wiped, and then they all get replaced.
Yeah, and that's what that's what I talk about a lot in this Imperial. I think we're kind of in the post-Imperial kind of area where the late game economies are pretty much situated, well, especially Louis and Yui with the trade, right? But it's making sure that you can stay pop capped while you're continuously taking fights. And I think one group of civilizations is going to be able to do that. One is not, and I think Knusch and ZertoN is going to be that one that is not.
Yeah, you can already see, I think we've gotten to the point there is no more gold on the whole entire side of ZertoN and Knusch. They're trying to wall in the market. I think they're trying to make that transition towards trade, but it takes so much time for that transition to actually happen. And we can already see the line on the other side of traders.
Yeah, it will be a perpetual Congo line. Pretty much. ZertoN's mass up front. It looks like 2 different skirmishes going on at the same time. Only horsemen over there from Knusch, but a lot of Streltsy will be trying to help clean out those knights. But over there on the northern side of the map, you have both red and pink going at it. And it looks like ZertoN, he does have those archers, which they do look like those bows are composite. They're firing pretty quick.
They're trying to fire like machine guns. They just don't have the damage of machine guns, and that's the real sad part. They're kind of just tickling the camels, the knights on the other side, not doing too much, not too effective. But you said, what units is ZertoN going to make? And that's the only thing he can make, really. He doesn't have resources to do much else, and now they're just going to be outclassed so significantly on the other side. I don't see this game going too much longer, even though ZertoN starting to make that transition to trade, and so is Knusch.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess better late than never, but the issue is, well, now stone walls, but you know, you got a wandering town going up against those stone walls, so those stone walls will be going down pretty quickly. The difference is, for the Chinese team, is they're already in where ZertoN's base is. He's fighting that main defensive keep that is there. So they're trying to get this trade going. The problem is they have a more immediate danger right on their doorstep, so I don't think they have the time to do it.
Yeah, and then time is definitely a huge factor here. A couple of these knights can easily just continue to split off, continuing to hit more and more of the eco. I don't see too many numbers left as far as military units from ZertoN and Knusch. We see the knights have burned through on that western side, right where the trade is starting, so the trade gonna struggle to complete.
Yeah, those markets might be going down rather quickly. A lot of villagers actually going down for ZertoN over here. That last wood line that was left, and you could probably, in my head, I'm just hearing shrieks of Abbasid villagers, which we've heard for so very long in the Age of Empires scene. We have culverins going down. That's 1,000 resources that just turns to kindling right near that main town center. And those are things, because that trade has not been situated yet, you can't make them again.
No, not at all, and you're not going to be able to make almost anything again, as Louis and Yui look like they are taking this game number 3 and giving themselves the leg up in this series. but they still have a long road ahead of themselves. They still got to lock this one in, finish it on up, but the Rams are going to tell the story.
Oh yeah, look at them trickle it in, Dabs. One might say that they're wandering in.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Yeah.
Can we get someone else on?
I'll be here for the rest of the stream. Thanks.
Unfortunately. All right. But literally, you see the Congo line of traders, you see the Congo line of military units just non-stop massing into this base, but somehow ZertoN's numbers seeming to be somewhat strong under that town center. Is it going to be strong enough?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are archers that we talked about, right? And there's a decent amount in terms of the front line goes for Louis. You're seeing a lot of those red elite knights over here, and you're seeing how tanky they are towards those archers. There's not a lot of knights that end up going down. There's a decent amount of archers. ZertoN trying to make some spearmen. Those are definitely not Imperial Age spearmen. I don't know what age they are, but they are definitely a little behind the times.
Yeah, this is a huge feels bad. Rams are just being a move, taking out everything in their path. I think I saw a hardened spearman. It's a hardened spearman.
Yikes.
Oh, and now TCs are falling behind this. Villager's not going to be able to be replaced, and ZertoN, he is the first to give up on this one. And Knusch, he might give it a couple more seconds. Not going to be able to take the game without a teammate, that's for sure.
No, absolutely not. He's got a lot of, I'm looking at it on the south side, there are some horsemen. Now it doesn't matter. Now the game's over.
A lot of hopes and dreams, one might say, but game number 3 completes, and what a showing by Louis and Yui in that mirror matchup. Just having that knowledge that transitioning to trade sooner than later made the difference.
Yeah, and to be honest, Dabs, I want to give you credit because I feel like you foreshadowed how this game went right from the beginning. You know, we talked about how economically savvy all of these civilizations would be with all of the town centers, and it's the economic savviness of getting that trade quicker is what ends up transitioning and really turning over the game. It begs the question, when we saw those 2 keeps, it was probably, I don't know, maybe from minute 20 to 25, something like that, and you had those 2 keeps right up against each other, right next to that 8k gold. I would think if you're ZertoN and Knuschelbear and you see that it's so heavily contested, wouldn't you think you'd want to trade yourself instead of keep fighting over it?
Yeah, it's so much easier said than done, especially when you don't have this extensive team game knowledge, because you want that 8k gold. You want to rely on villagers. Making a transition into anything, it takes time and has an opportunity cost. They had a lot of vulnerability, but one of the things I want to mention, during that trade transition, they had double layered walls. Double layered in the south, double layered in the north. They had a lot of extra time to have it pay off. So they planned and prepped that, and that's just the overall knowledge of team game playing. But looking in at this next map, another mirror, which, you know, some people complain a lot about mirrors. In 2v2s, it's less annoying in 1v1s. But in mountain clearing, this will be a shorter one, but an exciting one probably.
Yeah, shorter in multiple ways, right? Just because of how short or how small this map is with mountain clearing. Now, in a 2v2 setting, obviously the map gets just that little bit bigger for a 2v2 setting, but it's still quite small. One of the things that I wanted to pick your brain about, now that we have a little bit of time, I'm used to seeing English on mountain clearing, you know, and maybe I'm just thinking about it in a 1v1 setting because, you know, for the English, just because they have their short bows, they go get the board, you know, all that kind of stuff. In a 2v2 situation in mountain clearing, is English not usually a pick? Now, I know they, for ZertoN and Knuschelbear, they had one with English previously, but for the other team, I'm not sure if picking English would have been the best idea. What's your take on that?
I feel like English is typically utilized. It's weird making the transition from 1s to 2s, because just how you said, instead of having one single sacred site dead in the middle, I believe it's 3 very, very close and centralized together, though. Mali, I see some strengths, I see some benefits, but their main strength is just their military mass, their non-stop ability to just outproduce everyone else on the field. Their units might not be the best things out there, but eventually they will be. You get poison arrows, you get other things of that sort. So it does kind of shock me that we don't see English, but I do understand the Mali in a sense of the way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, for the Malian, it's the age-old thing since the Malian's inception into this game. When you can make your units 5 at a time, like it's Age of Empires 3, it obviously helps you, right? So in the area of mountain clearing where you have a small different geographical area, and especially with the Malians when they want to make out of the Farimba, I mean, obviously they do things like warrior scouts, not so much anymore. They kind of transition more so into sofas than anything else. But for the Malians, they don't have a lot of mobility because you're right. They go with archers. They put some poison on those arrows, and they try to take down a lot of those armored units that they usually come across, and they probably will in this setting, being up against the Holy Roman Empire. Obviously, I would imagine we're going to see a couple men-at-arms at some point.
Yeah. It's HRE. I found myself always saying, oh, look, we've seen the rare scene Archer Ranger HRE, but now I can't say that anymore. We've seen it a lot more often. In team games, I still could see HRE doing HRE things, though, and just hitting Castle Age. I think Knights, Men-at-Arms makes perfect sense, even Land Snakes potentially. One thing we haven't kind of talked about with mountain clearing and why HRE is one of the strongest picks is the proximity of relics to your base. You have 2 relics that are literally not even a stone's throw. It's like you walked outside the front door and you can't open the front door because the relic is hitting the door, stopping it. Like, that's how close the relics are to your base. So it is just like automatic gold income once Castle Age does hit.
Yeah, it's almost like if you've ever been, if you take like a beach vacation or something and you see someone out there with a metal detector right next to their house and they just happen to stumble upon a religious artifact in their backyard. It's kind of what it's like. One of the things we didn't talk about, also, not necessarily about mountain clearing, but now that we have a little bit of time to talk about it, is your wonderful mustache, Dr. Dabston. So I'm gonna break the fourth wall just a little bit, but we're actually observing for the games. I can't see the cameras when we're seeing them, which is nice because I would really not like to look at myself for multiple hours at a time. But I looked over because I'm seeing the stream, just that little bit of delay on Afreeca itself. And man, does he have the caterpillar on his face, doesn't he, chat?
Yeah, it's one of those. I had the beard rocking for a little bit, and it's 4th of July weekend, going out to the lake tomorrow I will be. And, no better time than to rock the stash than the 4th.
Oh, good for you. I'm on call, so I can't do anything fun. But now we're gonna jump into a little bit more fun now, because in our overlay it happens to be initiating, as you can see on your screen. Game number 4, ZertoN and Knusch are on the back foot for this game 4. It is match point for Louis and Yui. Let's see if they can advance in this Malian HRE mirror. I'm excited for this one on mountain clearing, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely excited. One thing, Mali gold can be close up to the wood lines, so that's gonna be one thing to notice, is how many houses you can have around that as we get to see these spawns in just a second. See if one player might get any sort of extra advantage there compared to another. But money is on the line. The next level is on the line, and sheep are being gathered on in. It's game number 4, and ZertoN and Knusch spawning in on this south and west side as the HRE and Mali. And what about the other side?
Oh, on the other side, playing as the color pink, I'm so glad I get to introduce the Holy Roman Empire, because YuiMetal playing as the Holy Roman Empire, using that prelate and spreading the word of their Lord Jesus Christ to all of those villagers for that increase of 40% gathering rate. And LoueMT, his teammate, spawning into the north side, playing as the Malians now. Dabs, we did talk about the relics, obviously, being in the backyard. Another thing we got to talk about in the front yard are these deer on the other side that you can see YuiMetal on your screen actually going near his town center. And this is why this is such a good HRE map, and it's such a great Aachen Chapel map right? Because all of your resources you could direct kind of closer to your town center. Everything is a little bit closer than it would be on a usual map with big gold mines, big stone outcroppings. So there are some really spicy chapel places.
But Knusch is here to ruin the day for the HRE player over on this side. We'll get a few of those deer in, but not as many as he would have desired, as that scout quickly runs across the map and denies out that vital, just most efficient gathering rate. And Louis trying to do the same exact thing for ZertoN. You can see he maybe stepped in a half step too close and took some town center fire. But it's the deer. It's one of these in 1v1s. We always see it in pro level play where it's like grab the sheep and immediately push in your deer, and then also attempt to try to like spread out your opponents, but don't step too close or you might die. It's a very, very close game because all the villagers are under the town center here early.
Yeah, and I would say on that eastern side where YuiMetal was trying to do that, that was a pretty good job of disruption. You know, the deer are kind of spread out a little bit around the area. Maybe for his teammate Louis might have a little bit better luck. But now our first Aachen chapels are hitting the ground. Let's take a look and see where they're placed. Ugh, what a good chapel placement, Dabs.
I mean, this one for Yui, it's... yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, no matter what, you get everything on this map except the wood, which wood lines are very, very crucial for HRE. Oh my gosh, he's getting that so fast. That is so many villagers on that chapel. We didn't mention, we saw it right when the game spawned, but the first thing we saw was that mining camp dropped, able to have that double mining camp on gold and on to the stone, although I don't think he'll be using it that early.
No, but it is a heads up play. I mean, with some of the, especially when we get into feudal age, early castle age, and they start to contest some of those sacred sites, you need that little bit of stone just to get those emplacements on your outpost, right? So maybe that'll help him out on the front side. Now, this mirror is becoming a little unmirror-like, Dabs, as you can see with these feudal age landmarks. Louis going with the Saharan trade network, Nushaber going with the Mansa quarry. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is one of those that the Mansa quarry, it immediately starts paying off. It immediately starts giving you those resources, but you need to do something with them. The trade network, it's just a defensive structure. It's just a defensive bonus. It gives you bonuses on trade if that happens. I don't think we'll see trade on this map, though. Fingers crossed. If trade happens on this map, this game has gone way longer than I ever would have expected it to. But the network, it allows just safe defense of that gold. No pressure going to come in, and both of these players can essentially just go naked fast castle.
Yeah, and I would think just because of how close the resource nodes are to the main town center, I was surprised he went for the extra defensive structure. When I saw Saharan Trade Network, I actually looked in the minimap to see if it was smack dab in the middle of the map, but it ended up being near the gold mines. Obviously, I mean, you could see on the minimap as well for mountain clearing, there are no neutral trading posts. So if they wanted to trade, they'd really have to coordinate with one another. And with this map being small, I agree, we're probably not going to see it too much because, correct me if I'm wrong, with this, and even in a 2v2 setting, this map, it kind of plays like King of the Hill.
Yes. Yeah, a 100% plays like King of the Hill. It's the sacred site control in the center. Usually, you know, if it were there were in English, there would be a white tower on there, or whatever it may be. But both of these civilizations, they're playing it more like almost kind of how you would think mountain clearings intended to be played, which is like hey, let's just get into some military and headbutt each other. Maybe not, I lie. It probably isn't meant to both play, hey, let's go naked fast castle and then fight. But that being said, it's going to be Castle Age comes out and then it's going to be all in each other. But the Regnant is on its way, and oh my gosh, with this timing from ZertoN, we saw how many vills he put onto the chapel earlier, and it looks like it's paying off because that Regnant, it's almost halfway up before the other side has even started, and I don't see military out on the field or anything in regards. Oh my god, it's a burger.
Oh, we're gonna see. We don't see any military yet. Dabs, that Burgrave Palace obviously gonna pop out men-at-arms, and I can't remember, I think it's about 6 seconds a pop or something. Those men-at-arms are gonna be able to come out, but this Regnus Cathedral now is going to be coming up probably about 617, 618, something like that. And that is probably the most greedy and naked fast castle that I have seen, to the point where I know we're broadcasting not on Twitch, we are on a new site. I don't know if we can show that level of nakedness.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter, because even still, the Burgrave, you need resources to have it pay off. So you can't just put 20 vils on it to get it down as fast as possible. So it's just now finishing, but there's 2 relics already in, and those weren't the 2 relics in the backyard that we were talking about. Those were 2 relics that were contestable, that were in the mid-map.
Yeah, and that's so crucial. I mean, obviously the middle of the map is not as far as other maps, but it just means those relics back home are safe. And you got to remember, just because you have a teammate, there's relics by your teammate that are safe, right? So you can guarantee, if you're going to go Regnant's Cathedral, and ZertoN did, obviously, he's going to be able to get all the relics. He can even take some of his teammates' relics. That's exactly what that HRE Prelate is doing. He's going to scoop that one up right next to that pit mine.
Yeah, but here's where we're going to start seeing the problem, is he needs wood to drop production, which you just saw the stables get dropped. He needs wood to drop more outposts to be able to house the relics, or I guess a monastery if he wants to do that. And then he needs more production because he needs to defend what's coming across, as Yui has men-at-arms. He just hasn't done anything with them yet.
Yeah, and we talk about the Burgrave Palace when it's seen in Mountain Clearing. It's really nice because those men-at-arms don't really have a long trajectory to go. But also, it's the first 3 or 4 minutes when that Burgrave actually comes down, you gotta make it pay off. And if you have a group of like 5 men-at-arms or something like that, especially going for ZertoN, who's just starting to get his military production, just starting to do things like get outposts to even put those relics in the first place, this is going to disrupt him and create some idle time. So it is starting to pay off a little bit. We'll see if it continues.
Yeah, idle time, idling out some food, but there's still just so much food under that town center. About to deny the whole wood line, and it's actually archery ranges for crossbows. I saw stables earlier. He must have canceled it for some ranges instead. We see 3 relics now next to his base that he doesn't have a home for, because he needs to prioritize defenses, or else he's going to lose this game.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, some outposts, right? To try to put, you can put your relics in those outposts. You might be able to get some emplacements and do some really good damage. But now their teammate, Knusch, does have the Ferimba garrison up on the other side. So maybe he might be able to come to his aid and get a little bit of a defense. I see archers in the queue for that Ferimba garrison, but look at this, more and more idle time on some of those stragglers. A lot of those HRE villagers, they're doing more running than gathering.
Yeah, they don't know where to go. They don't know where to gather from. The only safe, somewhat safe resource is this food, but as Yui could potentially just get a few more men-at-arms, they're going to still continue to struggle. Finally, 3 crossbows out on the field, and 4 now, and that's going to be enough to at least push the men-at-arms away for a second.
Yeah, I mean, just having a little bit to keep them at bay, right? And just giving the villagers a little bit of extra time if they do have the ability and, you know, the wherewithal to scurry away, and at least they'll be able to stay with their lives. Now, Louis is trying to help YuiMetal with that Burgrave and adding some javelin throwers and some Donzos to try to help him out. You can see YuiMetal's men-at-arms running away from some of those sofas, and it looks like we got a warrior scout in there as well. But those men-at-arms, they got some heavy maces, so they could do some damage to some sofas.
They could. They just don't want to turn to take that fight with the crossbows. They want to wait until they're all together in unison with their teammate to take the best trade possible. And that is where we see yet again diving in onto this eco. More villagers being idled, a couple villagers going down. At least 1 relic has been secured and has a place for it into that outpost. Oh, and villager getting away with his life, but the prelate will not. And again, good little timing push here, just fully making sure that ZertoN, yes, he has gold, but other resources going to be hard to find.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, you can see the market right next to that outpost and how important that market really is. You're going to have a surplus of gold, so you're going to be able to buy something. Either it's wood, either it's food or stone. Now, with those outposts, you saw springolds coming out of them. The springald did get completed, so it looks like Louis and Yui have to run away. Those javelin throwers just getting a nice little sprinkled bolt in the dome.
Yeah, they might have a little bit of extra range damage or defenses, I guess I should say, but doesn't really matter too much when you have that higher base damage, and that's exactly what those Springles will do for him. Main fight engagement starting to happen, and that crossbow number is nothing to joke around about. We'll need some horsemen out or some land snakes to try to get on top of that to do better, or I guess fully rely on your teammates' javelin throwers.
Yeah, I think having 1 or 2 land snakes might not be a bad idea. I mean, you see the composition from Louis going with javelin throwers and some Donzos back there too, so having a couple land snakes might be able to help him out. Crossbowmen going up against javelins might not be the best idea. Yes, they have numbers, and at least they have the base damage to really take down the ranged armor of the javelin throwers. A lot more went down than I actually initially theorized.
Yeah, it's just such, high base damage for crossbows as well. It had double-digit numbers, so you're still able to at least one-shot them. But look at the jabs on the other side, just slowly picking off all of the jabs, or a good grouping of the jabs from Knusch, and now yet again hitting some more of these HRE vills. So the big question becomes is, when does the vill kills prove to be enough, or will it get to the point where these populations getting higher and those relics are going to be much better than having any sort of villagers?
Yeah, and that's the only thing that time will tell, right? And I think it matters for how long this game goes on, right? Because those relics, they obviously tick every single minute. Every single minute you're alive and you're making units, it just means it pays off that much more. With these outposts having those springles, just like I said before, probably one of the best things that an HRE player can do, especially if you're going to fast castle, is making sure you get those outposts up. Because look at okay, the range of that, it was hitting in a different area code, Abbasid. That one actually upset me. How far that springle bolt went.
It has a relic inside. It gets extra range. Those things act like they're, the Windguard Rangers over there.
Yeah, I think there might be a ranger or two in there. Now, I mean, we're talking about mountain clearing, especially when we're hitting the 13th minute. So men-at-arms from Yui and javelin throwers predominantly from Louis. Because of this Burgrave Palace, they've had a little bit of a military advantage, we could say. It's a little bit more than how it was in the beginning, and it just means they were able to get those sacred sites first. So, Dabs, we're probably going to be seeing a decent amount of defensive emplacements around these sacred sites because they're just looking to start a clock.
Yeah, I mean, the clock starts. I think they want to continue the pressure for the time being now, and you don't really need defenses if you keep both opponents on the back foot, at least for the time being. And I think that's where we're starting to see that pressure transition a little bit more towards Knusch as well. I see some pink on the north side towards his one of his gold veins, and looks like reinforcing units from ZertoN are trying to head that way as well.
Yeah, and I mean, with that crossbow and mass all the way up near Nushabear's base, it just means they're not there to protect his own. So down south, and you're talking about with the sacred sites and being on a clock, sometimes the best defense is a good offense. So if you're over there raiding them and you're over there worried about their base all the time, they're not going to be worried about the sacred sites. Before you know it, there's only 2 minutes left.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where this timer, it just will continue to tick, but military numbers dead even. Eco numbers favoring Yui and Louis, but doesn't tell the whole story, as the relics for ZertoN will easily make up for that 13 build difference.
Oh yeah, for how many relics? I think there's, you'll have to correct me, but it's either 5 or 6 coming out for ZertoN, and for 160 gold a pop, if you're at 6 relics, that's a lot of gold, 960 to be exact.
Yeah, I believe it was 6, and looks like ZertoN and Knusch think they have enough to take this fight, think they have the crossbow mass and the jav mass numbers to do so, and it looks like Yui and Louis, they're falling back, and ZertoN is planning on a keep dead center of both of these sacred sites, and we all know he's going to put a relic inside that as well.
Oh yeah, having the extra range and the extra damage on that keep is massive. Yui, it looked like they were going for more of a sacred site, trying to end the game in 10 minutes kind of thing, but Yui's going Imperial Age. Palace of Swabia is 60% done.
Yeah, I mean, you want to have a way to have a leg up on Eco, and this is why they started losing these fights, is because he invested so much into Imperial Age. It's about to finish up, and Now the question is, can Knusch and ZertoN hold the sacred sites, or does ZertoN want to match an Imperial Age himself?
And I think ZertoN, just because even though he doesn't have the amount of villagers for him, he does have the relics, so if he does want to go Imperial Age and follow suit, he probably will be able to. Might have to stop making a little bit of units, but now that Swabia's up...
Oh, and a keep gets canceled. Couple more vills going down. We're starting to see some damage for Louis now.
It was kind of a ballsy keep drop up there. They don't necessarily have the map control in that area, and I understand, you know, the keep is going to give you that instant map control, but if you can't defend the vills that are trying to build it, I don't know if it's if it's the best idea to do it.
Yeah, this is not looking good at all for Louis and Yui, as the military mass, it's starting to do the thing where they're trying to split the bases, not allow reinforcements to go on to the other side.
Yeah, and I really like how they're kind of putting it in the middle because, again, we're trying to get rid of that synchronicity of both of these players, right? You can see YuiMetal. It looks like, just looking at the back of his base and the Swabia pumping out villagers around that wood line, hasn't necessarily done anything like a farm transition around the Aachen chapels. So those Gaia food resources are going to be starting to go to a minimum, and it looks like Louis is just trying to have any kind of foothold on this map at all, trying to make a keep.
Yeah, he needs that gold vein is his problem. He knows that that's his next gold that he's going to be gathering from, and you can see how many vills are already moving over to that. He needs that security to be able to have that gold for the long term, and that's the only way to do it as of now is another keep. But you can already just see how the military numbers tilting towards Knusch and ZertoN, and have been for a little bit. Swabia getting matched as well. Not too difficult for ZertoN, who also has a farm transition that's much, much better looking so far comparative to the other side.
Yeah, now the rating is going to be on the other foot, and it looks like, well, Yui, he's trying to get that farm transition. You can see it on the top left part of your screen, but ZertoN has a little group of men-at-arms, a little vanguard raiding force, and targeting that monastery that has 3 relics. Got to remember, he is on the Burgrave Palace, not Regnitz Cathedral, but those relics, they still mean something. Yeah,
fortunately for Yui, he's got his huge mass there. We'll be able to clear up that men-at-arms vanguard raid very, very easily. Nice old mangonel shots on the vills on the board. Weren't quite able to take them down, but this is where the siege war is starting in this mid-map. And the question is, can Knusch and ZertoN hold for 9 more minutes?
I mean, to be honest, if I was going to give a prediction, it seems pretty good for them right now. I mean, they do have the defensive structure up there with the keep. You can see a wall going up on the left side of your screen as well, while Yui and Louis are just trying to shore up their base. And I think it goes to show the difference in what these HRE players tried to do, because ZertoN went for the Regnitz Cathedral and has a lot of relics. Yui went for the Burgrave Palace, and now when you get to the Imperial Age part where you can make a bunch of barracks anyway, Burgrave Palace doesn't have that much of a payout like the Regnitz Cathedral does at this stage of the game.
Yeah, completely agree. But one of the things we see is these trebs have come out in mass. It's not just the trebs. There's mangonels as well. So it makes it a little bit harder for vills to heal up if the mangonels head that way. Keep already had emergency repair utilized. It is on fire, and a mass of vills are headed that way to help out. The Culverin moving forward at perfect timing.
Oh, that Culverin is going to be the saving grace for ZertoN and Knusch. But now with this big fight, there's a lot of ranged mass from ZertoN, and Knusch are going to be able to take those Donzos out pretty quickly. However, with all those ranged mass, that Culverin's going to have to take down all of that siege by its lonesome.
Oh, and a decent little bit of a couple mangonel shots there onto the blue crossbows. A couple of the men-at-arms just running in to give their lives for some siege. One treb did go down. Insufficient stone is what we just saw pop up, but I believe he has stalled it enough for that emergency repair to come on through like we see already.
Yeah, that emergency repair is quite frustrating, isn't it? Just that little bit of time, and that keep is ending up going up to just about full strength. Now, ZertoN's outpost that he made to try to protect himself while he was going up to Fast Castle is the only thing stopping these Aachen fields from getting raided against, and all of those villagers are going to have to back up. A lot of workers going down necessarily. I mean, the gold he's doing okay on with those relics, but you can't gather any of that food if your fields are empty.
Yeah, I'm surprised he just didn't go for the outpost since he knew emergency repair was utilized in the middle, but nice mangonel shot into that ranged grouping. Not any crossbows here forward now, it seems like, and this might be a decent fight for Yui and Louis, at least for a little bit, until some of those other reinforcements get there for Knusch and ZertoN.
Yeah, it looks like with the range math, the men-at-arms that YuiMetal has can really tank a lot of this, and we're seeing that. ZertoN's men-at-arms have to come in to be some sort of front line, but now the Malian player, Louis, does have the siege advantage. It looks like there's only one culverin to 3 springholds, so those 3 springholds will do some good damage. The only thing for the culverin is that range. It's going to make that mangonel pop into a little bit of kindling, so he's got to back up just a little bit.
Yeah, the mangonel is just so hard to actually be utilized once culverins come out. Just culverins shooting from like another screen across. And finally, we see some culverins starting to come out for Yui, so we'll be able to match that out.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, this is why it's so important for the HR, at least one of them, to be Imperial Age, right? Because we know for Mali, if they do hit Imperial Age, they're able to get culverins, but usually going Imperial, there's not really that much to gain for them. Their power spike is from that Farimba garrison, so usually in Castle Age, that's where they want to stay. But take a look. We have a little bit of raid up there on the northern side. Some of those javelin throwers from Neutral Bear just creating a little bit of a disruption now. Sacred Site timer now, Dabston. It's halfway gone.
Halfway gone, and not much movement has been able to be made by Louis and Yui. Just kind of been stuck battling at these same points for quite a while, and it doesn't feel good for them knowing that Regnance is on the other side, knowing that their opponents have kind of the upper foot.
Yeah, and I mean, for every minute this continues to go, those relics are going to continue to pay off. The Sacred Site timer did get stopped for maybe about 1 or 2 seconds, but ends up going the other way. We are just seeing all of these guys batting heads. They're just beating each other with all of these men-at-arms with those heavy maces, trying to hit each other. Culverins on either side popping each other as well. Those springholds have to back up just because they are quite the inferior technology to those culverins.
The keep almost finished. Yui pulls back a little bit early, and it looks like Knusch's fight in the top side has gone very, very well for himself. Pulls back, finishes up the keep. Mangonels re-arrive, and I don't see any more siege on the field for Knusch and ZertoN, though.
No, and that's got to be a key when you're getting these sacred sites, right? The only way that your keeps are going to go down is by siege of the enemy player. Things like trebuchets, things like bombards, that kind of stuff. You could see Louis' trebuchet right next to that Malian keep as well. He's trying to get some sofas over there. Neutral Bear is trying to take down that mangonel, but Louis with a good presence of mind to repair it. Now that keep, I don't know if emergency repairs has been hit recently, but that one might go down.
I mean, if that keep goes down, we might see a little bit longer of mountain clearing than expected, but emergency repair utilized at the perfect timing. I think Knusch might be wanting to kind of secure / deny those next bits of gold veins. Nice old mangonel shot connection on that one, but the next bit of men-at-arms are coming to help yet again for this next keep.
Yeah, I see a lot of people in chat saying that emergency repairs is crazy and broken, and I happen to agree with you just based on how long that keep has been able to stay up. It's like a cat with how many lives it has. Now with this mangonels coming in now, Louis has 3 of them. We're going to see if any of them get popped by culverins, but even though they're hitting men-at-arms for the most part, it's a good amount of damage to those men-at-arms. You can see that front line from ZertoN kind of evaporate, and you can hit that range mass soon.
And there's that gold that I was talking about. Both players on the Mali side desperately needing the gold and actually starting to run out of it. So that keep that Louis and Yui were just able to get up might be a bigger benefit for them to get back in this game.
Yeah, and I think it will. Louis really needed some of that gold, and I could see just based on military count, he's kind of fallen behind, right? Military count for both sides, it was 38 to 69, nice. And now with the amount of time that they have, now we're ranging at about 2.5 minutes. This is kind of put up or shut up time, Dabs.
Yeah, and the keep has gone down, which means the sacred site timer can easily start being stalled out as we see it being paused as Yui was the first one on it, but backed on away. Culverin Mass has been rebuilt up so quickly from ZertoN. Triple Culves right back out onto the field, and Yui just needs to be able to equalize it and match it with the same.
Yeah, and I don't know if he necessarily will be able to do it. He doesn't have as much gold per minute just because of the amount of relics that he has. And the Culverins, even though they are a good anti-siege unit, they do pack a punch in terms of heat. Mangonel shots from Yui trying to take down that crossbowman mass. Those are 5 dead crossbowmen hitting the ground. ZertoN has to back up. This timer is staying at 2 minutes and 18 seconds.
Yeah, and they are not pushing back forward, and not only is it going to be the siege mass, this is what I love when pro players do this. Rams, they're so hard to kill once they get on the sacred site. They stop the timer as well.
I think this timer is going to stop. There's no, like, he's not going to stop this men-at-arms mass. We have a whole new ball game.
I mean, the game's wide open yet again.
All right. Now, if I see markets on the other side, I'm going to lose my mind.
No. We're not seeing markets, but another keep planning to be built by the side of Louis and Yui. You have to be careful when there's a ton of siege out already, though, as right when the outline comes in, it can get one shot.
Yeah, and I think if they do start building, it's going to be able to. 5 Culverins on ZertoN's side, and it looks like 4 on YuiMetal. There was 4, now there's 2. And I think just because of having that 1 extra Culverin might do all the damage. As long as you're taking them out, it means the Mangonels can go down. But the Mangonels actually hitting the Culverins as well. Those 2, just because of the men-at-arms being that front line for them, end up staying alive, end up being picked off. And again, I mean, just at this part of the game, 28 minutes, this was a little bit of a stall. Even though I would say this battle kind of went in the way of Knusch and ZertoN, Louis was able to get a keep up right next to that top sacred site.
Yeah, that's all that they were wanting to do, resecuring that location, but the siege is rebuilding by Knusch and ZertoN, and this might have just been an overstep. The eco might finally starting to reveal itself and the weaknesses behind it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Now, I'm curious to see. I wish. Oh, look at that tribute from ZertoN. 2,000 total resources to Knusch and ZertoN. Just because he has Regnitz Cathedral, just because he has those Aachen farms, he's going to be able to do that for his Malian teammate. And Knusch, his Malian teammate, of course, is going to have a couple trebuchets trying to take down that forward Malian keep. ZertoN now, he has some pretty expensive siege equipment. He's not going in the way of mangonels. He's not going for that kind of stuff. He's just going for straight bombards. He's trying to take down a lot of these structures that Yui and Louis have on this map.
Yeah, and taking down structures is exactly what happened. They have reclaimed that gold on the western side. The multiple trebuchets sieging down that keep, and there was just no ability to keep it alive by Yui and Louis. And this is the point now where I feel like Knusch and ZertoN are finally reclaiming their spot and reclaiming this game while having, I feel like, the leg up the majority of the time.
Yeah, it's kind of wild because that sacred timer did go away. Now what the focus is on the map. Now it's not the sacred sites anymore. You can see all of those villagers building keeps, outposts, so many Malian villagers on top of that gold mine. It's all about the gold now. Sacred sites be damned.
Yeah, it's going to be about the gold, going to be about the map control and the eco. There's not much room for it. Speaking of map control and eco, it's Fort of the Huntress, but he is saying, ZertoN, get your bombard out of the way.
That thing is not moving for any Fort Huntress or otherwise. It's trying to look for any kind of building to end up going down. Look at all of those.
How many villagers are there?
I'm going to say that was about 69 villagers up there trying to take down that ram, and it did so very successfully for the Huntress, now going to be made for Knusch, and that is quite a powerful keep in that area. Defensive structures around that gold. Louis and Yui, I don't know where they're going to get any of that gold anymore.
Yeah, you can see how their numbers are just falling and falling fast as far as the military goes. It will be very fast with the eco as well behind this. Mali Imperial Age, the keeps are right on the front of their base, literally in town center range. Javelin throwers, everyone just going to move up into the heart of the eco, and this is going to be the first big ender. When Mali is transitioning to farms, you know it's a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just the Malian player that's having issues. I mean, there's sofas from Knuschelberg going to be up in this area, but in Louis' Aachen fields, they're also getting hit. They realize they don't have the resources, they can't repopulate, and they call the game.
Taking it into a game number 5, the first series, the most exciting series so far, the only one so far. It's game number 5 next for us. ZertoN and Knusch able to tie it up.
That was quite the long mountain clearing game, you know, being at 31 minutes. And you know, I'm gonna take it back to a point that I mentioned in minute 8 of this game, and it was the difference about how HRE played, in my opinion. And I think that's what actually ended up costing Yui and Louis, was the fact that Burgrave Palace was made. You know, I mean, I don't think it was able to do as much damage for the 4 or 5 minutes after the Burgrave was made, because ZertoN, he already had his Regnus Cathedra at like the 610 mark or whatever number it was, and he was able to get those middle relics so easily, to the point where when Burgrave was made for map control and trying to prevent those relics, he already had them, so it didn't matter.
It just made it so easy for him to mass back up. Getting that market down, I think, was the key. If the market had been denied, it would have been over from there. But just such a good job stabilizing. Help from his teammate definitely helped him to do that. And now we are into the third and final mirror matchup between these two players. I can see the sigh, the frustration in your eyes. Not a Chinese fan by any means. And we have Chinese Mongols on either side.
Yeah, I mean, what's better than one Chinese when you got 2 of them, right? Just having two Chinese on both sides, on hill and dale. We got a couple hills and a dale in between, Dabston, and a couple Chinese players. We're probably gonna see. This is my pessimism talking, but we're probably gonna see some Song Dynasty, some granary transitions to the moon and back, you know, with the Mongolian players being their teammates now. Let's be into actual non-biased caster mode for a second. When you have a Mongolian teammate with you on Hill and Dale as China, what does the Mongol player do to help the Chinese player get to that boom, get to that late game economy?
So you actually have a couple different routes you can take if you're the Mongol player. You have a lot of players now that have been going just for the quicker Feudal Age into Keshiks, and getting their trade on earlier and sooner, and that might be the way to play it, even though it kind of sounds bad letting your opponents do whatever they want. Getting spears to go all the way across the map doesn't always work out too well, especially with Chinese building the mill under their town center and being able to fast build the barbican if needed. You can easily find yourself not having a successful tower rush, and if you expend a bunch of resources into that, you're just going to lose the game right then and there. So I feel like the safer play is kind of just playing Feudal Age, playing it kind of more towards that long game. But I think both players on the Mongol side are going to trade, and that's where you can't always play like you want to as China.
And that's what, I mean, just like you said with the Mongolians before in Dark Age, if they do something like a tower rush, I mean, it's not a 1v1. This is a longer Dale, you know? So it takes a while to actually traverse the map and get to the other side and actually find an area, just like you said, also, that's a towerable area. Now, got to remember that this is not the Hill and Dale of old. It's the newer Hill and Dale, so they have to venture out away from their hill and go out to get some of the resources that are on the outside. A lot of the times in prior seasons, it was mostly just about trying to get those outside wood sources away from the hill, right? Now, it's a little bit of everything, you know? I mean, yeah, you have some stability on your hill. You have a deer patch that's close and, you know, that kind of stuff. But to those outside large gold mines, and those stone outcroppings are really important. So map control, you can't just sit on your hill all the time, because then you're just going to be waiting to lose.
Yeah, exactly. The old Hill and Dale used to be able to wall yourself in. You could even get up to Imperial Age behind your walls with all the resources behind it. Now, you will not be able to extend the game too long without those resources. So definitely have to venture out. Definitely need to take more map control. Mongol's a civ that's very good at doing that. My big wonder here is if we're going to see one of, or maybe both the Chinese players actually choose to play it Feudal Age, or if they want to just play that full eco 2TC song boom like we see a lot.
Now, I guess my question to you, we only have 15 seconds, so I'm going to ask it pretty quickly. For the Mongolians in Feudal, if they decide to do something like a trade, I would think, would the Chinese player want to be more aggressive in Feudal Age to try to protect that trade route?
That's typically what happens when trade is utilized at all. You have to invest into protecting the trade to have it pay off. So usually, yes, you would want that to happen. So it kind of becomes this harder pairing, but we're going to be able to find out what these players have in store for us in just a second. It is game number 5, the game decider for next round.
Ooh, match point for both of these players. I see in chat that they think Dabson's mustache will win this tournament, and I happen to agree, but we got to cast the games in front of us. We can't just look at his mustache all the time, guys.
Oh, if only. I would love it if my stash could win tournaments for me and make me money, but that is unfortunately not the way that it works. But we are into this final game, and let's see how these hills are looking for either of these players. Whoa.
Whoa, indeed.
All right.
So, you know what? Let's just do formal introduction. Spawning in on the northern side of the map, the team of ZertoN and Knusch playing China. Spawning in on the western side of the hill. The eastern side of the hill is Knusch as the Mongols. Dabston, tell me, in this game 5, who are they playing against?
On the opposite side, we have the pairing of Louis and Yui, as well on the Mongols and the Chinese. And already we're seeing some slight differences as an immediate deer opening for China, which you don't always see due to the tax drop-off. You don't drop off as much when you're gathering deer, so you actually have to force drop off a few extra times if you want that tax gold to actually be efficient for yourself. But back into the map, Hill and Dale, we see some odd spawns, we see some weird spawns, we see some fun ones, and one thing that immediately sticks out to me is the sacred site control. You basically can ignore half the map. It's all on the middle and east side of the map. There's no west side sacred site. And each player kind of has a safer, closer sacred site in a sense, so could be a possibility of a sacred site victory extension because you don't have this huge extensive map that you're going to have to split onto a bunch of different spots. And oh my, we do have some earlier aggression planned here from Knusch.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see with Knusch's strategy. The one right across from him is the Chinese of LoueMT, and he is the one that went a little bit forward to try to get those deer. YuiMetal also following suit with a barracks of his own, probably trying to find a raidable area for ZertoN. And you can take a look at the mini-map on the bottom right-hand part of your screen. That gold mine is a little bit forward for ZertoN, right? So that could be an area if you wanted to tower. But what I am also noticing about this hill as, well, both hills, I should say, as these Mongolian spearmen are going to start to traverse their way across the map, is on the hills, Dabson, there are large gold mines.
Yeah.
And that makes me sad a little. I was not expecting that. I was expecting them to have to traverse, but now with these two players and 16,000 gold betwixt the two, not just their starting gold, they might not have to venture out as quickly as we thought.
Yeah, and one of the things that I will say about the barracks opening, I don't think it's going to be this actual tower rush. The reason being is if you send your 4 spears over in a vill, or let's even just say 2 vills because you want to build the outpost fast, your opponent has 4 spears and he just focuses on the vills and has defender's advantage. and then you lose out your tower rush, you lose out your spears, and the barbican gets finished before any damage gets done. So I feel like this is one of those that it's more for counteracting your opponent's spears than it is for actually doing damage with your spears.
Yeah, and I think as you're watching here on your screen, YuiMetal's spearman, it looks like he's got a group of 4 of them just hanging out by his hometown center. I guess that kind of makes sense. But more than anything, Louis now with that barbican over there on the eastern side of his base, going to be able to support that gold mine, support the deer and the sheep that happen to be on that mill. But Knusch going with Feudal Age a little bit quicker than YuiMetal and is going with the silver tree.
Yeah, it's kind of exactly what is expected. Again, even if you want to play it more aggressively, the silver tree is still the way to go. The deer stones, it provides you a little bit of an economic bonus, but in team games, you know that trade is always the thing that can be done. And even if you don't immediately start trading, building a couple randomly, a couple minutes down the road will end up paying itself off very, very quickly and forces a reaction from your opponent.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing. We actually had this conversation off stream. This was probably like months ago, about the fact that you're playing in a greedy way is indirectly proactive, right? Because it makes the other civilization react to you. And that was something that I actually struggled with dealing with conceptually, because I was like, well, I want to get, as somebody who likes knights, I want to go in there and I want to start attacking villagers and all that kind of stuff. But with the Mongolian players making Silver Tree, it just means that you got to send your troops over there. ZertoN had a barbican that just got canceled.
And Raid Bounty went over there. We saw the torches get thrown. We saw the Khan hit it once. The spears are here, and there are plenty of spears here. Yes, we might have seen a quicker Feudal Age finish for Knusch, but that's because he didn't invest in enough spears, and we're starting to see a little bit of damage come out.
Yeah, and Yui, I mean, there's not just 1 or 2 spears. There's 6 of them out there, and just because of how many that were there, you had to cancel that barbican and get that nice little raid bounty, that extra 50 resources. That's really huge for ZertoN. That Song Dynasty gets delayed a considerable amount.
Yep. Now those spears will have to run on away. The Khan, having the Feudal Age bonus, was able to attack while firing, so slowly just picking off the spearmen. But finally, Yui should be able to actually still quite a bit of ways away. Is he not actually building his silver tree?
No,
Oh,
so
he's
his
moving.
silver tree was built. It's just
Okay.
getting moved.
I was wondering. I was like, the overlays just makes sense now, though. When the Khan goes down, GG's will be in the chat. And not only that, the numbers now starting to favor Yui. And just how we saw Knusch pushing the spears back, we're seeing Yui do the exact same thing back to him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could see how important it was for something like that barbican to get canceled, right? Because then all of Yui's troops were over on the other hill. It just means on the other side, you're able to do the things that you need to do. That silver tree getting moved. He's starting to put stables down for some Kashyyyks. He's up 1 Khan to 0. That's got to be good, right?
Yeah, chasing down the spears. We did see the maneuver error utilized a second ago, so was able to get a little bit of extra damage on these spears as well. You might not think like it's much, but when all of a sudden these spear-on-spear engagements happen, it's going to be crucial when you lose 2 or 3 of your spears immediately right off the bat.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And especially in the beginning when that battle was initially taking place, I'm pretty sure one civilization had Feudal Age spearmen, the other one did not. So you need a little bit of quality, or you need a little bit of quantity over quality, to really actually try to turn the tides for you in that battle. But now Silver Tree on that western side is going up, and some traders are going to be there as well. Knusch trying to get a little bit more mobility in his army composition, starting to churn out some Kashyyyks.
Yeah, and so we're seeing, as far as the military numbers on both sides, heavily favoring the team of Yui and Louis, and it's because the Chinese player. Louis is investing into units, whereas ZertoN, he is not. He had his song delayed. He is going with his secondary TC as well, so investing into more eco, but the Chuk mass is rising fast, and we talked about it pre-game. This also will cause Knusch to have his trade struggling. It's going to be so much harder to have successful trips if the military is being invested into by Louis and not his teammate.
Yeah, and I really think that's because of Yui and Louis smelling blood in the water here, and how offensive they were able to be, and how aggressive they were able to be in the beginning of stages of this game. Even right now, these Keshiks going to go ahead and throw some torches on that Uvu, where on the other side, Yui on the western side of that hill, Louis on the eastern side, they're already walling.
Yeah, they have their whole hill walled. They're safe and secure there. Knusch is building outposts along his trade line to try to protect it, but he doesn't have anything to protect the trade line. We just saw the few Keshiks just kind of transition on over to there. Not yet pushing forward towards the barbican or anything else, but with this mass together, if Louis and Yui decide to just dive one of the bases or deny the trade line or whatever it may be, they could cause a significant amount of damage here while still investing into economy behind.
Yeah, and I really think if they give it a little bit more time, maybe wait for all of those Zugnu to get across the map, I think they really have a good potential of happening. And again, I mean, we talked about this with the Sacred Sites last game with a good offense being the best defense. If you're able to push their base, you know, it just means that your trade is going to go off without a hitch. Yui already has 9 traders. Louis has a market on the other side of the hill that's going to give him that little bit of gold income to push those Keshiks out too.
Yeah, one thing is I'm surprised they're not going for the longer trade, but they're just not playing it greedy. They don't want to have any losses if they're not needed. And once they have this full map control, I'm sure then he will extend it out and have that longer, more of a payoff with his trade. But for now, they're denying the trade of Knusch. You see a trader down right next to that Uvu, not able to do anything, and might actually just be able to deny this full location.
Yeah, and I think if they're able to continue to have that foothold, but look at that, Devs. Keshiks from Neutral and Spearman coming in. This is a good feudal fight.
Oof. And there's just enough spears here from Yui to be able to deter those Keshiks on a way. He still has a good amount of those Chooks on his backside. That's the main damage, but doesn't allow the Keshiks to dive on the Chook mass.
No, and I think that's what's most important, because those are your real DPS units, and they're really going to be able to counteract the Zugnu on the other side. Just having those couple Spearmen might actually end up helping. Keshik number from Nushaber might be a little bit higher in this, but the Zugnu mass from Louis was always higher, just because he was able to pump him out sooner. ZertoN is keeping his Zugnu there. He's going to lose that mass if he doesn't back away.
Yeah, but the Keshik number all of a sudden looking very, very healthy for Knusch. Needs to watch out, though, as they are not like typical knights, very, very squishy in comparison. And overall, during this fight, I feel like Louis and Yui, yeah, they took some solid trades. They can just easily remass back up. But ZertoN started to get pretty scary with his 2TC song behind this.
Yeah, I mean, you could see the difference in the eco count, right? It's 105 to 86 in favor of him, and that just shows how powerful the Song Dynasty really is, getting those villagers out 15 seconds each instead of a normal 20, as another civilization not in Song Dynasty does. So we'll see if, even though this trade route is not as elongated, we'll see if it actually ends up paying off as much as a second town center. But it looks like they're ready to stretch that thing out, because they're walling that whole western side.
And the outpost does go up on the market, so they're a little bit of a trade behind the hill. Gets spotted out by the outpost, so they will know that Yui and Louis have been investing pretty heavily into this trade. You hate to see Chooks trying to take out an outpost that has arrow slits in it. But this is where I think Knusch and ZertoN overstepped a little bit. Keshik number very high, but not the greatest matching timing with Yui and Louis as far as the attack speed arrow and when the fight got taken.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a disconnect there. And oh my gosh, there are more Zugnu that went down than I kind of realized. I think there was a group of like 15 over there, and now there's about 4 left. But anyway, military count for both of these guys actually somewhat even at about 50s each, and it looks like now that Nushaber and ZertoN can breathe a little bit, they don't necessarily have a giant army mass on their base, maybe they can set their trade route up.
Yeah, but you can see how Louis is planning on investing in more and more walls. Not only walls for his trade, but walls to stop the trade of Knusch and potentially allow Yui to transition his market to either side if need be. Keshik still just kind of diving in, having that standoff. It's mainly the Chooks just fighting each other for the time being. Army numbers still favoring Louis and Yui just a little bit. Initial engagement happening. Keshik's diving in, and the pink Keshiks absolutely obliterated the teal ones.
Yeah, there's just more Keshiks, right? It's just more numbers. And you see the Khan is going to be able to help him out on Yui's side, as well as Zugnu, just trying to kill those Keshiks, kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts. And as long as there's a couple up there that are of equal or decent strength or decent hit points, the Zugnu from Louis are going to end up staying alive, and they can keep backing this mass up of Neutral Bear and Zutron.
And look at how well that fight just went for Yui and Louis. More Keshiks meant the Chooks ended up firing through and getting closed in on by the other side, and all of a sudden there's basically double-digit Keshiks for one side and not too many for the other.
No, and I think that's really going to be the key in battles going forward, right? And just because of the amount of Zugnu that went down from ZertoN, he just doesn't have the same amount as Louis anyway, so he's got to back up. There's a reason why he doesn't have as many. He's going up Astronomical Clock Tower right now.
Yep, that is exactly why. So Castle Age wants to get that tech advantage. Chooks just battling out in front of the Barbican. And trade is going to be re-established to the longer market now by Yui right as the new age begins for ZertoN.
You know what was one of the really important things now with ZertoN hitting Castle Age is Louis put walls on the eastern side of that area. There's that second neutral trading post over there on the eastern side. So Neutral Bear is going to have to find some other place to trade with that silver tree on the northern tip if he wants it to be successful.
That is absolutely true. Going to need to finish the walls, as I think he's halfway through that wall on the eastern side. Not for sure yet, but look at the timing here. Knusch and ZertoN moving out, and YuiMetal did not have his Keshiks in the correct location, so a lot of Chooks started to get picked off, and this is definitely a timing where Louis probably wanting to transition to Castle Age himself as well.
Yeah, and I think he doesn't really have much of a choice, you know? I mean, you're just going to be going up against units that are just better than you, those veteran Zugnu, and not only for going up against the Feudal Age Zugnu, but going up against Keshiks too. Having that little bit of extra firepower, you can cut through that armor depths.
Oh, you'll absolutely obliterate the Keshiks. You won't even need a front line anymore, it feels like. Speaking of obliterating, they just killed a mill way too fast for comfort. And it is not the Chinese player going up. It is going to be YuiMetal on the Mongols going up. And I lied. It is the Chinese player as well going up to finish it. And the wall... Did a wolf kill it?
I want to say it might have. Yeah, and I don't know. I think this is a really, really bad time for both of these players to go up to Castle Age right now. ZertoN trying to wall in that trade. And looks like as long as they kill that bitey infantry, he might have an ability to do that. But now that both of these civilizations just went Castle Age on the southern side, their military might suffer just a little bit because they have a giant mass of
This is
Zugnu.
gross.
It is absolutely disgusting, Dr. Dabson, and I hate it watching this.
Chooks just took that TC to half health before the ram even started helping. That is not... I don't know about you, but if my building gets taken down by arrow fire, I have a bad building. Not the only thing going to be taken down as the villages as well. The Kurultai has moved forward. This is when they want to take that engagement is from that Kurultai. Speaking of going up, Knusch going up to Castle Age as well.
Yeah, and again, we're going to see a little bit of a difference here in the mirror. We're choosing different landmarks. Neutral Bear going with the step redoubt. I feel like he kind of has to because his trade isn't as situated as Yui's is. So Yui can go with the Kurultai, and that means whenever they take a battle and that Kurultai ends up going there, Yui and Louis are going to have the advantage every single time.
I'm confused why Yui hasn't moved his market to the corner. It's so much gold that he's giving up.
Yeah, I have seen the silver tree there for quite some time. I'm kind of curious why he didn't move it to the south corner as well, because those traders, I mean, he's probably given up on how much gold for each? It's probably, I mean, he could probably double his trade route, right?
I believe so, but oh, I think he's trying to go from corner to the other market.
That's insane.
I think that's what he's trying to do. But main fight, main engagement going on. Battle numbers looking basically dead even. It's going to be about the micro. It's going to be about what units are attacking each other. Attack speed arrow comes out for Yui and Louie. And those chooks, they're going to be like machine guns with the nest of bees. Able to get some decent bit of damage on the other side, and the nest of bees is still able to stay alive. That is the key difference. The chook mass immediately runs home, and the outposts that we're all invested into not going to be finished either.
No, that one nest of bees made all the difference in that battle, right? Just how it was able to take down a Zugnu mass, not necessarily the units in general, but the health that they had. It put a lot of Zugnu at about half health. And take a look what Vodka is showing us. There's an ability for a civilization to go Imperial Age if they choose to, and they are pop capped already.
And I mean, that's just when you have that many troops, you have your ability to do so that easily. But you want to make sure that you're able to remass back up if needed. And what another connection on the nest of bees.
All you need is one good beehive, and it just stung about half of those Zugnu. But the difference is ZertoN, because he went that second town center so early, has the ability to go up to Imperial Age and is going to make the Great Wall Gatehouse. That's our first Imperial. It's going to be all the way over there on that western side for some reason. Not really sure why he chose to build it there, but going up to Imperial Age and getting Imperial Age units is going to help him out. If they can stay alive, that beehive going to go for another round.
That I'm shocked by the nest of or the Great Wall Gatehouse placement.
Yeah, I
but taking this fight as they're going up to Imp, they're down 50 military. They're down that nest of bees, which is getting unbelievable connection after connection after connection. It's not just one, there's multiple, and there's enough chooks to basically have this thing surrounded as well.
Look at how many are going down. The nest of bees, like it's not like a mangonel. Like it's so difficult to dodge, and we're seeing how borderline impossible it is. Look at the military count right now for these guys. 122 for Louie and Yui. Now that they saw an Imperial Age, they know this is their time if they want to close the game out. That defensive structure that Vodka just pointed to all the way on the western side, it's not doing a damn thing for him right now.
Yep, the Springle trying to move up to take down the nest of bees, but just not going to be able to do so. And this is one of my favorite parts, is when you actually dive onto the Mongol town center, not the Chinese one, the Mongol one, because all their food's under their town center, and they usually don't have outposts invested next to their town center. It's usually all out and about across the map. But
yeah, and I mean, if you want to see a good nest of bees shot, you hit them on all those pasture villagers. I think we would lose our minds.
Oh, absolutely. Fortunately for Knusch, they spread out a little bit. Some villagers moved forward. Some nested bees in play on that spot as well. A little bit of some raiding on the eastern side attempting, but Louie and Yui having to fall back as those Springles going to have an, oh my gosh, the nest of bees, that was in a huge choke point, not the full fire off, so not quite to the effect needed. And now we can see how chooks are essentially Springles.
Unbelievable. Like, why is that allowed? You just have, like, I mean, it's a group of like 30 to 40 Zugnu, so I get it, but you know, that nest of bees and that Springle went death by 1,000 paper cuts pretty much. And now look at all of those pasture villagers. They're all, I mean, there's a majority of them in the town center. A lot of them don't have anywhere to go. You're absolutely right, Dabs. There was no outposts in this area.
Yeah, and behind this, Louie and Yui are having an untouched eco. You can see how much resources Yui has. He's sending resources over to Yui to help him on out, because he is that full boomed up trading Mongols with 32 traders.
Yeah, and I mean, having all the, it was just like Nushlebear and Feudal Age, he was never able to get that trade route really underway. Trying to build outposts around that town center, but continuing to lose villagers. That was the one thing that Nushlebear and ZertoN had over their opponents was their vill count. You could see it was at about 200, if I remember correctly. Now it's starting to dip, and it's going to keep going down.
Yeah, ZertoN sitting at just max over there. But is it going to end up being enough? Because his teammate is getting absolutely obliterated. And the fortunate part about this is for Louie and Yui is this is a 2v2 game, and their two together is much, much stronger as far as this one is showing us right now, as they are pushing forward, about to take down the main TC of Knusch, and it's sure to be ZertoN's eco after that. Huge Nest of Beast shot yet again, another Nest of Beast to follow this up, and this is just might be the point where their APM cap, there's stuff going on everywhere, and they cannot hold this push.
Yeah, I don't see a way for the Mongolian player, for Nushlebear, to recover from this. Look at how many vills are going to go down. I mean, there's a ram on his starting town center. There's a couple Nest of Bees. There's this nice little pocket eco from ZertoN all the way up north, but you can see there's going to be raiding in that area too. Look at all those vills. That gatehouse coming in handy, Dabs.
Is it though? Because he instead of going towards the gatehouse, he just runs towards the granaries instead. The Nest of Bees on top of the main TC and Knusch. I'm not sure how much resources, eco, numbers, population, whatever Knusch has in general, as he is running quite low. And he surrenders.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty much out of this game anyway. ZertoN's going to give it its one last all. Maybe he's typing in chat GGGL next, which hopefully as a good player he is doing, but his counterpart, yeah, sufficiently dead. Is he, I'm kind of waiting for it. Well, there's a Wololo going on by that keep, but is he going to try to do this?
I mean,
okay, never mind.
I was like, you can try, but it only will last so long. And he finally throws in the towel. What an exciting series. But that's just the first one of today. 3-2 going over to Louie and Yui in just some crazy exciting games.
I mean, that entire series was back and forth. All the way from game 1 to game 5, because we talked to, I mean, I even said it when we were going into game 3. I was like, I don't like this. I don't know what's going to happen, you know, for what. There wasn't any like overpowering team that was like, okay, this was going to be a quick 3-0. And again, with how the teams were actually made and how the other players were actually drafted, you could see how close a lot of these teams are. I feel like if this was a best of 11, it would have been a 6-5. You know, like if we just kept playing games, it would be that close.
Yeah, and it's just what a great series. What a great strategy coming into their game number 5 as well. We kind of were like talking about all the hypotheticals beforehand, but we talked about knowing that you need to invest in defending that trade. If you defend your trade early, it really can help snowball. And even though ZertoN had a lot of vills ahead, it wasn't enough to deal with the trade that Yui had fully online. So unbelievable job, unbelievable series. It looked scary for a second on the side of Louie and Yui, but able to hold strong